Not a retail time drive, but we certainly go to clients.
Oh, they don't come, you don't
No,
have them come to your
no,
office?
no, we're a managed service provider, so basically, you know, our customers have issues, we go take care of things. I do have, obviously, we do some off-site, so I'll have employees, technicians working there, you know, servicing companies, you know, remotely, but nothing that is like an influx of traffic.
So then employees will park on the grounds?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. We'll have to have some parking, obviously, for our employees, but it's not like 30 spots or anything like that. It's,
So in other words, you're not gonna be on the street?
no.
Can I ask, did you acquire this property for the purpose of opening a business?
Yes,
How long-
in hopes.
How long have you owned the property?
We bought it in December.
And we talked with staff before about, you know, because we could ask for variance to do certain things or rezone, but because of the nature of that, that's what we thought was the best idea. I will say too, like I said, the future use map, when you guys did the comprehensive plan, it does say it's a mixed use of both commercial and residential is what the plan was back when you paid for that comprehensive plan and went through that process.
So if he occupied the house now, would he have to go through the same, or would it be a
He
home
could
use
occupy it as
variance?
a house right now. But to occupy it as a business use, it requires a different type of approval, either rezoning. variance.
From an R2.
Yeah, because you can't do a business use in a residential district right now.
But you could apply for a variance just for a professional office.
Well-
It doesn't change the
But you
zone.
also have to show hardship that's not self-created, that,
Yeah.
it's a little, in my opinion, variances are always a little bit higher because there's a hardship that is not self-created, something unique that the ordinance is imposing that is unique upon that situation, which
Yeah,
that's hard to justify in my mind.
and again, I think the nature of it is, I don't know that you're gonna notice a difference other than less water use, you know, no one will notice that, obviously, other than wastewater, but it's not.
But I think we raised valid points about what happens down the road.
Yeah, for sure.
What happens if we sold commercial property in December of this year?
Well,
And
and
1 year of the impact to people who've been there for years. I mean, just based on what I've been given, I would make a motion to deny. I apologize. but-
And if you wanted to also protect that, you know, one of our uses is professional services, you could make a condition that it's only professional services, so Dollar General can't come in there then. And that gets recorded with the deed then. Just as a suggestion, to give you options, but.
And there is a provision in your in UDO to permit the conditions on that for this purpose, to say, hey, look, we're fine with you now. Because those are complaints that are raised frequently, right? I think another one was, you know, can we build up to this property line? Well, no, you have other restrictions, we're not asking for variances for those building, we're not anticipating building, I'm just trying to address the other.
I mean, if it was adjacent, I could support it if it was right next door to the CVS, but right in the middle were all homes. You know, agree to disagree, I think it could have been, you know, different means, maybe some due diligence prior to the acquisition. Say, I will stand with the motion to deny.
I'll second it.
Okay,
Okay, so unfavorable
So,
recommendation?
yeah.
Okay, unfavorable recommendation.
I have a motion and a second to send, ordinance number 2024-03 PC Vortex Computer Solutions to the county commissioners with an unfavorable recommendation. All in favor signify by, does anybody else have any questions or comments? All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, and I have something for you guys all to sign, make sure we get that signed. So, let's start with you, I guess. So this will be resolution 2024-04. And then it will go to the commissioners, and if you wanna get in touch with their offices and find out, they do their own agenda. We can update those before you get to that,
Thank you.
Did you vote nay? Yes. If you voted nay, it's the second column. Yep, so you can sign right here. Oh, sorry, you voted yes. Yes. Yeah. It was a motion carried unanimously, so everybody should be signing that first column on that.
Okay, so now we have 2024-0. Now we have 2024-04 PC Robert Lane Company, a waiver for Sycamore Village subdivision.
Hello, I'm Dr. Brian Hart with Lake Baker Associates, here on behalf of the Robert Lake Company, about the conservation subdivision Sycamore Village. This is a 13-lot subdivision off of Juniper Ridge Drive off of our 403. We've already come before the board for preliminary plat approval, plat has also been approved and recorded, subdivision's been built. We have a waiver we're requesting for the sidewalks. On the preliminary plat, we agreed for a 4-foot grass strip from the back of the curb to the front of the sidewalk. During construction, we noticed that, especially here in the back of that cul-de-sac, as you can see, getting a little steeper and having some of the driveway steepness problems. So we're asking for a waiver to reduce that grass strip just in the back, in lots 7, 8, and 9, and 10, to a 2-foot grass strip just to get some of that driveway steepness down. And then on top of that, we are doing the opposite along the main road, making some of that grass strip. Instead of doing a 4-foot, we're doing I believe it's a 5-foot grass strip, and making it bigger in the front, although we didn't get approval for that, according to me. And you're asking for approval?
So, you also have kind of some write-ups on that in your packet, in the 3rd tab or 4th tab on there. So again, the secondary plat is already recorded, as Brad had mentioned. There's number 3 on your packet, shows the waiver that is being requested in the alternative standard. It's for at least a 2-foot wide, separation between the sidewalk and the adjacent curb, excuse me. Brian Dixon does not have any issues with this. He thinks, again, because of the topography, it will make it an easier transition from their driveway to the road itself. And on number 5, on those notes there, I did give you kind of the standards of evaluation for a waiver from our UDO, so that the waiver won't be detrimental to the health, safety, welfare, or injurious to the property with a reasonable property within a reasonable proximity. District applications will result in some practical difficulties, because of that existing topography on site. Those back lots are pretty steep. And then it was not, self-imposed because, again, there are not really any feasible alternatives to that. And so it does represent a necessary and, it's minimal deviation from our ordinance in that. So, this one does, because it is waiver, secondary plats, waivers, if it comes with a secondary, we don't require public notice for those, so we don't have a joiners on this one either. So, because our secondary plats are administratively approved, so this doesn't require that public notice.
All right, are there any questions or comments?
So the size of the sidewalk's gonna stay the same,
Yes.
and it's ADA compliant.
We're just moving it a little bit closer, so.
Okay. I'll make a motion for a favorable recommendation for approval.
For approval.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion and a second for approval for 2024-04 PC Robert Lane Company, the waiver for Sycamore Village subdivision to reduce the sidewalk setback lots at 5 to 10 from 4 feet to 2 feet due to the topography issues on these lots. Any other questions or comments? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
We have rules that apply to applications by the public, and we have rules that apply to BZA hearings, but we don't actually have any rules with regards to changes or replacement or amendments to the UDO. So you folks have the right to vote this evening to establish rules. And my suggestion for setting those rules would be that any person, any household that wants to speak with regards to this UDO change this evening would need to sign a sign-up sheet, which we have accomplished now. I would suggest that each one person per household be allowed to speak, and that they receive a 1-minute opportunity. that if an attorney represents a household, they may speak on that household's behalf. And if an attorney, which I know we have one here this evening, who represents several households, would receive a maximum of 1 minute per household represented, not to exceed 15 minutes. So translated, that means that one person from each household, if they're not represented by an attorney, would be allowed 1 minute to speak. If an attorney represents at least 15 households, then they would receive 15 minutes maximum to speak. After we hear from the public with regards to the suggested rules, then the staff will present their comments on the UDO. If you have any questions of the staff after they present, then you may ask the staff questions about the proposed amendments. And after that, you would vote to either send the UDO recommendations on to the commissioners with a favorable, unfavorable, or no recommendation report. In other words, this board does not actually determine whether the UDO amendments are passed and become effective. We only report to the commissioners as to whether you want to change those rules as presented, want to give no recommendation, or that you have an unfavorable recommendation.
So
And,
Dave, you got a minute?
sure,
When did we go, I mean, since I've been on board, we've been always given 3 minutes, why do we?
We don't give them 3 minutes.
because we don't have rules for this type of a situation, so we're changing it to 1 minute.
We make the rule for you?
This board makes the rules.
Right, so from 1 to 3 minutes, maybe you can make, that's already been done.
No, I think 1 minute, no, I think 1 minute is fine.
BZA's 3 minutes.
No,
3 minutes.
so that's for applications. This is a UDO amendment, so it's a different process. We don't have rules specified for public comment on that. Just
From a
to give
practical
you,
standpoint, most applications we hear that have been private applications, we have 2 or 3 people, maybe 5 or 6 people. As you can see from this room tonight, you're gonna be here till 2 in the morning.
no. Right now, we have 37 signed up, plus an attorney that
Well,
represents.
the board makes the
everybody.
rules, I don't.
Still have a motion to accept these rules,
To accept a change or the rule?
to accept the rules as presented.
There needs to be a motion on what our rules will be with regards to hearing
I'd like to make a motion to change the rules.
I'd like to see the rules before tonight, to give me some time to think on it.
You said there were no rules.
Yeah.
Well, those rules were written up sometime.
Just this morning.
Where's your
Just this morning,
attorney
somebody
at?
is up there.
Where's your attorney Dave Mahan?
the, sir, you don't have the floor, you're out of order, so please be quiet.
I will.
Thank you.
I would think at least 2 minutes, and then, I mean, like if an attorney represents 15 people, then that gives him 15 minutes. He's speaking for 15 people, so he can say, I'm sure they're all on the same page as far as how they think, or he wouldn't be representing that large of a group.
Just to be clear, you're not voting tonight to change a rule, you're voting to establish rules for a UDO hearing.
Right, but we want to hear their concerns, correct? Or,
You can make a motion to set rules any way you want to, and the board can vote on whether they approve it.
make a motion to change, to make a rule
Sure.
to 2, 3?
I think when compromise, I think if their compromise is 2 minutes, I would be comfortable with that. I don't know how the rest of you guys feel. I
2 minutes, 2 minutes, can I say that? That's my motion.
Not a rule.
Well, motion.
Yes. You have to set all of the rules, not just one.
Okay, so do we, are the rules fine except for the time limit?
Yeah, could I make a
Okay.
motion to accept the rules as presented with the change to 2 minutes per allowed
Per
speaker?
household.
per household,
Okay, now,
as a compromise.
are you changing the suggestion on the attorney?
No, sir.
Maximum of 15 minutes.
Yes, agreed.
Okay, so do I have a second?
Only if, I don't wanna hear the same thing twice or 3 times.
My suggestion on that would be that the chairman be permitted, and this is in our other rules for both boards, that the president may terminate any repetitious or irrelevant presentation. Cut it off.
Oh, thank you.
That's you, you got
Okay, so do, have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Have a motion and second to accept the rules as presented, except where we have a maximum of 2 minutes per household. All in favor, signify by saying aye. All opposed?
Opposed?
Okay, motion carries.
Who voted nay? Oh, fuck. Just save that. Okay, so it's 2 minutes per household, or 15 minutes for attorney representing both.
Yes.
Right, that's summary. Okay. Do you want me to go ahead then?
Yeah.
All right, so, you guys have in your packets, you've had, since that was published on the website, those amendments that were proposed with strike through and underline, the yellow highlights indicate changes, just so you don't miss an underline. Again, we've gotten a couple hundred comments on this, those are all in your packets as well. And what we've done, is also, I've got a version I'm gonna hand out to you today, I've also got it on the screen. And these just included minor edits that don't change content. So there's a suggestion again, solar energy system, sometimes the ordinance called it facility, sometimes it just called it system, let's make it constant. So I'm gonna go through those as I walk you through each proposed amendment, but I am gonna pass those out to you guys. Those proposed changes are in red, so it's very clear, but nothing was a substantive change on those. But I wanna make sure everybody can see it, so it is on the screen. This is the, I did not, okay.
Yeah, okay.
There you go. Okay. Because I did not make any substantive changes, these were just clarifications or making sure we had it defined in our definitions section. We have five areas of amendments that are being proposed this evening. 4 of those deal with various sections of the UDO, and 1 of them deals with solar, which I'm guessing majority of the folks behind us are here for that one. So also when we get down to motions, if you guys do want to make 2 separate motions, one that includes the other 4 amendments and one that includes, you can make 2 different motions if you'd like after we go through public comment, just to make sure if you like one amendment but not, the others, we can work with that. Yes, sir. Turn that TV, I think I'm on theirs. Is this the same remote for that TV? I'm gonna try to play technology here, so bear with me. Is it the same HDMI? Thank you. I did not realize it wasn't on the other TV. So I'm gonna walk you through each of these and give you kind of the rationale. Last month, we just talked about broad topics, but didn't have language because we wanted direction from you all. And I also will give you, again, a lot of these comments came in the last 24 hours, so we've tried to sift through them. But some of those reoccurring themes I can at least mention too, but as a disclaimer, it won't cover 100% of the comments because there were a number that came in the last 24 hours. So this first amendment is looking at the age of manufactured homes when placed. In Indiana Code in 2023 was amended, so the state amended our code related to this. They also did amend it this time, but it does not relate to this again. It further clarified some of that previous bill. But basically, we currently in our ordinance have a standard that a manufactured home, when placed initially, can't be more than 5 years old. The state kind of overruled that and said basically we can't regulate that anymore. We have an overarching statement in our ordinance that says if state statute, overrules us, then it automatically is changed. So this is really just to clean it up so there's no confusion. So that would be on that chapter 3 in our manufactured home section. It would strike that standard and just remove it completely. Questions about that one? Okay. So I'll run through all of these before we have public comment, just so you guys and everybody else understands. So the second amendment is looking at an in-home childcare. The state calls it a childcare home by definition. I would personally just call it in-home childcare. And so this is currently not a special exception in the ag district. It is a special exception in our residential districts. This is kind of in response to recognizing a majority of our county is zoned ag, and a lot of those ag parcels are houses. And so that if someone wants to have an in-home childcare in an ag, it's still, we're recommending it would be a special exception. Is that first part. And again, that still goes to the BCA, it goes through a public hearing process to make sure there's no impacts. The second part of this one is also the minimum living area in ag. So, this one originated, this is the first one, to add childcare home to the special exceptions in ag. The second amendment to that ag district is looking at the minimum square footage for a living, living area. So this again was in response to BZA suggestion. They've been getting a handful of those, maybe 5 a year I would guess, and they all are getting approved. So the idea here is this is not what a lot of people think of as tiny homes. This is a structure that is on a permanent foundation, meets all of our state building codes. It's just small. And so the recommendation coming after we kind of discussed that last month is taking that from 644 square feet to 240. So again, it's not something that is on a trailer that some people think of as a tiny home. It's on a permanent foundation, and it has to comply with all of our state building codes. So it has provisions for eating, sleeping, sanitation, all of those things as well, just on a smaller scale. So, are there questions on those ag changes? Okay, David?
I'm kind of lost. I mean, what's this got to do with? I guess I missed the last meeting.
So when we usually go through amendments to the UDO.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, so no,
Sorry about that.
so with the manufactured homes, for example, it's been on our list to amend for, a year, and it's just cleaning up the ordinance. We don't go through the whole public hearing process, usually just for something minor, so we kind of hold those things until we have enough to make it worth going and advertising public hearings and going through the whole process. So usually we lump a number of these together. And that's where some of these others have started to initiate. The minimum living area just came up within the last couple of months. It was a suggestion maybe in January or February. I'm looking at Bart because he was at that BZA meeting. I think it was the February meeting.
You get to the point where they come in, you give approval, and it's like, if we're gonna approve it every time, then why not just adjust it to where?
Correct. It allows for affordable housing within the county too, is one.
Affordable housing.
Well, you don't have to build a 1,500 square foot house, you know what I mean? Options for that, so.
I got a question back on the
Yes, sir.
manufactured home.
Yeah.
That could be a single wide, double wide.
Yeah.
Is there anything that monitors the condition of that trailer when it's moved?
Not
You could have a
necessarily.
5-year that's destroyed and a 10-year that's perfect, or
Correct,
20 year.
depends on so many things, just like a house, yeah. No, we go down to like a unlivable condition, but that's not necessarily something the zoning attacks, it's,
It's a health department or something.
it's unsafe building code type of thing, in my opinion, not.
So
But
can I
the
ask-
state has said we cannot regulate it, so we don't really have a choice.
So we're gonna start inspecting module homes and trailers in Clark County?
No, we're just regulating the age when they're placed. Nothing else is changing related to
Oh, I
that.
thought you would.
And it's just that right now our ordinance says it cannot be older than 5 years in place. The state last year came in and said, you can't, they changed the rules. They set the rule of the state.
Well, if you notice, some farmers have these trailers pulled on their farms and because they can't. take
They
them out
should
of
be
state,
getting building
correct?
permits for those, and that is already established. They
And we're not-
should,
Yes, and we're not taking any from out of state into the state of Indiana, right?
that again goes back to building code, so no, I mean, that's not
Right?
regulated.
We don't give out, transportation permits to move when that comes from the
Correct.
assessor's office. We're just looking at the age of it.
Okay.
Correct. And Jason would go out and do an inspection as required to make sure the tie downs are correct, and you know what I mean, it meets all of our other standards, but the state has come in globally from an Indiana perspective and said you can't regulate the age when they're placed anymore. So we're just aligning with state. We're not changing any of our other rules related to manufactured homes. Okay. Questions on the first two? Okay. And the order of these generally relate to like page number, that's why I put them in those orders. The third one is looking at access for subdivisions to local roads. So this is just clarifying, right now, when we have a, subdivision that's accessing a local road, there's a standard in our ordinance that just says it's best engineering practices. This is just to make it clear, black and white, to amend this standard right here that currently relates to freeways, arterials, and collectors, that it is existing to any public road, so even a local public road. And it's basically saying that if it's gonna border, that road, basically we can look at these standards and how they access that road. So, can you have a curb cut every 50 feet? That might not be the best practice. It might be okay on some. Smaller subdivision, it might be that the county engineer can recommend shared driveways. Ultimately, that comes back to the planning commission. It's just their recommendation, and the planning commission can decide that. But it's just making it clear for that. Questions on that one? Okay. The next one is solar. Question, Connie, I'll defer this to you. Do you want me to cover the last amendment really quickly, since it's a
Yeah, let's go ahead
easier?
and do that.
None. It's an easier one,
I
maybe.
don't want it to get forgotten.
Yeah, exactly. So if we go to the fifth amendment that was proposed, and we'll come back to four, but we'll just go ahead and take care of this one. Currently, the county has a minor plat committee. This is the subcommittee of the plan commission that hears and votes on minor plats. So minor plat in Clark County is 6 lots or less. Historically, this has functioned, a little different because they would just meet at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday or something of that nature. Now, it's become a little more difficult to schedule these meetings, and I've talked to a couple of the surveyors too, just to get their opinion of just making this go on a planning commission agenda. The advantages of minor plat is if you have a whole lot of minor plats, it just takes it off your agenda. We get 1 or 2 a year. And so it just becomes more of a hassle on our end and on the applicant's end to get a meeting scheduled, determine meeting date, get the notice out for that. It's just more rigmarole than it's almost worth, because we don't get many minor plats. So this basically is eliminating the minor plat committee. So that amendment would take it out of the little flow chart, and it basically is going to say that minor plats now just come to planning commission for determination, just like you guys would do your primary plats, preliminary plats. So basically those edits there are taking out minor plat and replacing it with planning commission throughout that minor plat section for processes. So it might add 1 or 2 things to your agenda, but they're usually very quick and easy, so. Any questions on that one? Okay, now we can back up to the one that probably get a little more discussion. And I'm gonna back my mic. Okay, so I'm gonna scrooge back up here, guys. Sorry, it's going too slow on here. Okay, so then amendment number 4 on this document, and I'll kind of walk you through some of these too. We broadly discussed these topics so that I could get guidance from you all last meeting, and that's kind of where we've started to develop some of these. And I'll run through each amendment, each proposed one, so you guys can kind of ask questions about each specific one if that works for you guys. So this first one, right now we require all communication and power lanes to be buried underground. So there are some exemptions that, again, BZA can make, and, you know, and some more extenuating circumstance, but that's still a BZA. Right now, there's been just some comments about trying to make sure that it is encased in conduit based on conversations about building code. If it is high voltage and underground, it has to be in conduit, is basically the state building code. We already have a section in our solar regulations that say it has to comply with all state, federal codes and, you know, regulations anyway. So this was just specifying that. Some comments we've heard is just, again, say that it complies with some of the state codes, which is kind of duplicative. So I don't have a preference on this one. I think it's restating maybe what's probably already required. So are there questions on that one? Just so we can go through each one.
You said it's conduit, it's all underground, there's nothing above ground.
So the only place our ordinance allows for above ground is between where basically, all of their lines come together and then they connect to that substation. So it's between those 2 points, it may be above ground currently in our ordinance. Everywhere else, it has to be underground. So all of these easements, and if, you know, likely if it's a larger facility, it has easements and that sort of stuff, all that has to be underground. Your low voltage that, for example, if you have a whole bunch of panels that link together, that low voltage would run through that structure, and then when it gets to that endpoint, it goes underground because it becomes high voltage, but, so anything that's along like our county roads, it has to be underground. Again, the only exception is between their end point where it all comes together and where it hits the grid, that kind of substation, for non-technical terms there. Okay? Alright, because that's how I understand it in that aspect. So the second one is looking at setbacks. So again, the yellow highlights, it's straight through and underline, but basically we're looking at setbacks and some locations. So we've added some language to that first one. Commercial SES structures must follow by following locations and setbacks. Again, it was just kind of clarifying some of that language.
What is our definition of commercial?
We do have, I can pull that up if you'd like, hold on. Commercial SES, do you want the official or do you want me to just summarize it for you? I can do both.
Yeah, what all it includes.
So commercial is defined basically by our ordinances, the intent is for off-site production of energy. So it is looking at, if I have the intent to take energy, create it from solar and put it to another parcel, that is considered commercial. If it is used for my own home or my own business, that's considered the personal accessory. We do have a threshold of a size for that personal accessory. If it gets too big, it has to comply with these standards. But again, the definition is, if the intent is to take this and put it off site for energy use, that is our commercial definition.
The structure,
Oh, we do define structure in our ordinance. So
the commercial structure,
we
like a commercial SES structure, like a panel. Or
So we
a
define what
accessory
commercial SES is, so that's just, and it's any structure then, we define structure in our ordinance, any structure related to that then. So a structure is basically what you would think of. A building is a structure, but a structure is not a building. You know, a building has a roof and walls, a structure is any, and I can pull that definition up, I don't have that one. It's basically anything you're gonna think of, it's gonna be your cabinets as a structure, your bases, panels are a structure, your bases for those are a structure.
Every part of it is a structure.
Anything that's basically built on, or, you know, it is considered a structure. So basically here, the bigger kind of contents on this though, are looking at modifying our setbacks from non-participating landowners' property lines. So a non-participating property owner is someone who is not part of any solar project or, you know, petition or application. So if this parcel is going to participate in solar and the next one is not, that's the non-participating definition of that. So currently that setback just has to meet zoning district requirements, which in ag would be minimal. So this is looking at setting that back 150 feet from any non-participating property line. Again, that can be waived upon mutual agreement. So if that property owner doesn't care, then that's fine. That can be waived. So this would be any property line, it doesn't matter what the use is in particular. The number 2 on there is looking at residential dwellings. So if it's a house or something of that nature, right now it's 150 foot setback. This would amend, the proposal is to amend it to 250 feet setback. We also did clarify that it's the closest edge of that dwelling. So we just wanted to, again, more clarity is always better, I think. So that was clarifying that. And then the third amendment that is in there is looking at setbacks from roads and public rights of way. Currently it is 50 feet. And it is, so it's 50 foot from a right of way if we do not have a dedicated right of way, which means we have a written recorded instrument, which most of our county roads are what we call assumed right of way. So it's right of way is just you know, right off the edge of that road there. If we have a dedicated right of way, it's 50 feet. If we have assumed right of way, it's 75 foot from the edge of pavement. And that basically gets it to the same point, more or less, because you would have a 50 foot right of way. So this is increasing that, and that was, on there. And then the final one on this section is location. So this is where it's just saying that it cannot be located in a floodplain, wetland, or waterway. We do have a floodplain ordinance that then defines what floodplain is, which includes our 100-year floodplain, basically. on public comment, we did get a whole lot on the setbacks from the public road and right of way. So a suggestion, that was a very common comment that we did get. So the suggestion there is that one could remain the same. The requests from a lot of those people were for that one to remain at the 50 foot or 75 if we don't have dedicated right of way. Mr. Addett.
Did you say that the footage starts at the middle, you may have, at the middle of the road, footage?
No, so the
I think you
50.
said it, but I didn't.
Yeah, no, you're totally fine. So it is from the right of way, the edge of right of way. And a lot of instances, because we're a county and rural, we don't have a dedicated right of way. So it's not been like recorded, and I always look at a surveyor then. And so from there, it would be edge of pavement, because again, when we've worked through some of this in the past, our previous county surveyors like, I can always find the edge of pavement. You know, it's easy to find. So that's where we measure from for other districts as well. That's what we measure
Like any
from.
kind of other roads, like a road that a farmer uses just to go, well, not a farmer, it'll be on both sides, but.
Yeah, so this is actually looking at public rights of way. So again, it's gotta be at least assumed right of way or a public right of way. If it's a private driveway, that's not gonna be
I believe we
effective.
talked about some fencing.
We'll talk about that in a moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's,
So the one suggestion on this one is that if you wanna keep the current setbacks from the rights of way in public roads, that's a suggestion out there for you guys. That was a frequent comment that we've received in the last couple of days.
okay.
Questions? Yes,
Sure,
sir.
do we have any, someone may say, well, edge of pavement, this is a gravel roadway. Do we have any gravel roadways in Clark
I
County?
don't think so.
Okay.
Nothing that is a county
Okay.
owned. There's some private ones that are
Okay.
gravel over the days.
Amy, in regards to
Yes.
item number 2, the non-participating residential dwelling setback.
Yes.
You were saying that shall be a minimum of 250 feet from the closest edge of any non-participating residential dwelling. Well, let's throw a circumstance out where, let's say that the person might have a 10-acre tract.
Right.
And they're not participating, and the house is 250 feet in from the property line. Does that
Yeah.
mean that these solar panels can go right on the property
So that
line?
would default into your property line. Again, in my opinion, that would be your property line. So it's always 150 feet from a property line, no matter what. If I have a house there,
Okay,
if your house is sitting in the middle of 40 acres and it's set back, it's gonna be a moot point. So it'd always be 150 from a property line. If your house is closer to your property line, that's where this would come into effect. And we can add some clarifying language there if you want. I'm all for that if you like the number, but wanna add some clarifying language. That's why I have pulled it up in a Word document that,
I just didn't see where it was from the property line, a minimum of 150.
yeah, so that would be, again, that's defaulting back to that
That's
number
item
one.
number 1.
Mhm, yes, sir.
That would rule over that.
Yeah,
Thank
it
you.
usually always has to be 150. If your house is getting closer to your property line, that's when that's gonna come into effect.
Thank you.
Let me ask you one, go ahead. You're-
Well, if your house was 50 feet off the property line, then they would have to be 200 feet.
Correct, you are correct, okay, yeah. Mr.
I've
Gay.
got a lady that has a house, and she's told me that the solar panels will go all the way around her house. So you're saying from her property line, all the way around will be whatever we.
150 feet, it could be more depending upon where the house is located. And tonight, we're not talking like about a certain parcel or project, but generically, if that were like a generic case, yes, it would be at least 150, but depending where that house is sitting, it has to be 250 from the house, so. So those, you'll notice the red, this stripe on facility here, this was just a good clarification on definitions that we define commercial SES, which is solar energy system. We don't define facility, so it's just to make sure everything's clear, we have struck the word facility. So not changing any intent, but it's making sure that we aren't, creating confusion in that, so. So that is a change from what has been sent to you guys. Questions on the setbacks and location section? Okay, so moving on to the screening section. Again, you'll notice this first red is, again, same thing with the facilities to the systems. We're just making sure we're clear there. We also have just, again, clarified that it has to be fully screened. We said not visible from any public road, and existing residential dwellings, existing residentially zoned parcels, or existing residentially platted, basically, parcels. So the idea here is currently we require that screening for, again, residential dwellings, zoned parcels, residentially zoned parcels and residentially platted parcels. This is adding public roads into that. This is another one we've heard a lot of comments on. So one suggestion here is, do you want to require screening from public roads? That's up to you guys. Again, it kind of ties in with that setback too. One thing I will mention on the setbacks too, I failed to mention, one of the comments on that setback is that the farmer's gonna have to maintain this odd section of like farm now, if that were to happen, and it probably just won't get maintained. So it might not look as nice as if you didn't have it there, if that makes sense. The other suggestion here is in red, and this was just a good clarification, that nowhere in the ordinance do we define, when we talk about it not being visible, we don't define where that vantage point is, basically. And so we wanna just be clear and say what that is. So this is something I have added here, just for you guys to consider. The viewpoint for screening shall be measured at 5 foot 6 inches, which is an average, it's like 6 foot person, from either the center of a public road, and we keep that if you keep the screening from a public road, or from the highest ground level adjacent to a dwelling. So if we're talking about a house, go stand next to the house, where's the highest point, it's 5 foot 6 above that. Or 5 foot 6 from the nearest property line if it doesn't have a dwelling, so we have to pick a place. So this was just an attempt to not have to interpret that later. Are you talking about from like the top of a combine, or are you talking about from a regular passenger car? And the intent was always from someone, normal person walking around or sitting in a normal car. So that is a clarification there. Again, just trying to make sure we don't have to interpret that at a later date. So are there questions on this one? Again, the one comment we've gotten frequently is to maybe not require that screening for public rights of way.
The height of these panels will exceed this number.
So again, what we require it just to be, it can't be visible. So all we're saying is that height. So if I'm standing on a road and I'm taller than me, whoever's 6 foot probably, you can't see those panels. So we don't specify the height of the screening. We don't even specify the material. It can be vegetated, it can be berm, it can be fencing. It's their job to then make it not visible from that point. So if it's up on a hill, it might be easier. If it's down, you want your screening as close to that person from the vantage point. So it's up to them to kind of figure out, and there's probably, again, we're not talking parcel specific. There are areas in the county that it probably wouldn't be visible. So it's already not visible just because of either topography or existing woods or, something like that. So we're not specifying the means, we're specifying the end result.
So that's gonna be something he does, go out and make sure it's up to,
Yep, that's something we'll be
that's his job.
hanging out, well, whoever's doing the inspections, which that is Mr. Stanley at the moment.
So when there is a complaint of it's not being maintained, then it falls into the $2,500 violation fee.
For instance, right. And we currently already require them to do annual permits to make sure we can stay on top of any violations as well. Are there questions on this one? Okay. The next one is talking about ground cover. So you'll notice the one little red edit there is just striking the word facility. I believe there's 8 of them in here that you'll see. The proposed amendment we talked about last time was to strike the word pollinator meadow. It still allows somebody to do pollinator meadows, it just doesn't maybe encourage it, was the suggestion we talked about last time. Pollinator meadows can be fantastic, but they're very hard to establish and maintain. And then all it is basically clarifying that invasive and noxious species do include weeds. So just giving some clarity there on that one. Questions on the ground cover? Okay. I want to make sure we go through these one by one so you guys can ask questions. So the fencing is the next one. That's one you were asking about, David. So right now, we do not require fencing for solar energy systems. State building code, as I understand it, does require fencing. So in essence, it would get fenced. We do specify right now what they cannot use, so they can't use barbed wire and that sort of thing. That's just to make sure, from a use perspective. So this amendment is looking at fences required. So unless it's otherwise required by this Indiana statute, The project shall be completely basically enclosed, and it, including any of their structures, components, or electrical devices with a fence that's at least 6 foot high. In my understanding of state building code is either has to be 7-foot fence or 6 foot with a foot of barbed wire, which we don't permit barbed wire, so in essence, it's gonna be a 7-foot fence.
Wait a minute now, you said no barbed wire.
We do not allow it.
You just said a strand, didn't you? You didn't?
No, I said state code. Currently, what the state building code would say is 6 foot with a foot of barbed wire or a 7-foot fence.
That's
We
the
don't
strand.
allow this, so they have to do this.
Hey, do you have a copy of this? She's just reading this right
Well, I'm
from here.
going off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, everybody has a
Well,
copy.
there's sometimes, it's like looking at a lawyer, I wanna make sure we're on the same page.
Yep.
You're doing a very good job too.
No, you're good. Ask questions. I'd rather you ask than not know. So the second one is our materials here under number 2. So right now, the white text is what's already in our ordinance. Barbed wire, woven wire fence designs, are prohibited. So that's the, again, more invasive ones, I guess. Chain link is currently permitted. What we're also just specifying is that wildlife friendly fencing is also permitted. So again, some of that is, I'll say, allows the little critters to get through, but not the bigger critters or people. So it might be have a gap of yay versus, the chain link is an inch by an inch or inch and a half by an inch and a half. So that's all that is. And then the third was, again, one of those suggestions that we discussed. It's looking at wildlife corridors. Where we kind of started to land on this is that if an area has more than 1,500 acres of contiguous area within a fence, that then we should start to look at some wildlife corridors. And that wildlife corridor should have at least 50 foot, but no more than 200 foot. That comes from some DNR standards. I'll look at our ag extension agent that, but also then B is to be maintained in a natural state or reestablished with vegetation if it, was maybe row crops or something of that nature. And also be unobstructed. So basically we don't want you to have a wildlife corridor and then put a big structure in the middle of it where they can't get through. So that is the idea on that one. Any questions on the fencing?
So fencing could be considered screening, is that correct?
If you can't see through it.
You can't see through it.
Correct. Chain link I can see through, so that wouldn't be a screening. But yes, they could have an opaque, a solid fence, and that could be some screening. It's up to them how they
Type
screen.
of fencing could be.
Okay, the maintenance might come later on in this, but the maintenance of inside, the animals allowed, how's that gonna work? Keeping it inside the fence, clean, down, grass.
That would just go to our nuisance ordinances. We don't, from a zoning perspective, we don't regulate grass height or anything of that nature. From a zoning perspective, that's usually in a nuisance ordinance that lies in a separate section of code.
That would go to the township trustee.
Correct, yeah.
Well, we need them to do their job, or how can we do it?
There's different townships, different trustees.
Correct. Yeah, our zoning does not address grass height. Any-
Sorry.
No, you're good. Any questions on those? Okay. The next one here is emergency response, and you guys did request that I reach out to our Clark County EMS. I did talk with Gavin, and he had some great insight, so this is really coming back to EMS is not my specialty. I'm gonna rely on Gavin's opinions on that. So basically, we already require some site layout, accommodations that they need to make sure that our, first responders, EMS, fire, police, that, if there's an issue, that you can actually get into that site and whatnot. The emergency key box, or Knox boxes are sometimes called, this one, number 2 there, is really just requiring that. That was, Gavin thought that was a good suggestion if, especially if it's a commercial, a lot of SES, these are not local, folks. And so that there is just some sort of Knox box or an emergency key box that any of those EMS, first responders, fire, police who need to get into that site have the ability to do so. So, those are pretty common on a lot of commercial, areas and structures. And then the last one is emergency response training. So this is just, again, having the operator basically invite all your first responders out, let them make sure that they understand the lay of the land, and making sure that if there's a special way to, deal with an emergency related to that specific, a lot of this is probably fire related, I would guess, or anything of that nature, but is there a specific way you need to deal with it? Layman's terms in my mind is grease fire, don't put water on it, right? So are there certain considerations that our emergency responders need to know? And that's all that really is related to. We had previously discussed if there's a need for emergency lockers on site. Gavin said no, they will not use those. They want to keep it on their trucks or their emergency vehicles. They don't want it scattered amongst the county. And that he also had confirmed that there really is not specialty equipment that they are going to need. So I did confirm those items with him, so that's why those two things are not in there. So, questions on that? Noise and vibration, we're getting there. Noise and vibration though. So this is starting to mirror some of that House Bill 411 that we had talked about previously. So noise levels, for many of the SES, you'll notice we've struck facility twice in here, again, just for that clarity. Including any structure, component, or electrical device shall not exceed a 50 A-weighted decibel at the outer wall of an adjacent dwelling. That's coming from the House bill that was enacted 2 years ago, so that's lifted from there. And then we also talk about it shall not create, this number 2 is not from the House bill, shall not create or produce or cause any vibrations that are detectable beyond the property boundary where it is located without the aid of instruments. So this one didn't give a certain vibration level. We have no way to measure that. We would have to hire companies to come in and do that. So this is responding to it at a more broad level.
So,
Yes.
this is one where I was interested
Yeah.
in, because I understand the 58 weighted decibels, but in my mind, that should be measured at the property line. Because I think, depending on the size of someone's lot, it could be impacting.
And
severe noise
that's something you guys can
pollution.
consider. This was again lifted from, it was just trying to
Sure.
look at a precedent.
Understood.
I agree with that,
I think it should be at the property line.
because at some point, someone may want to build a dwelling on a property line, closer to it.
And at your minimum
Than what
setback.
the dwelling is.
You might have a fire pit or something, and not be
Yeah.
able to use your property without
Okay.
your
I'll mark that as a suggested, and after we do public comment, we can do strike through and underlines and any of that. And that's for your notes, okay. I'll make that as another thing to circle back on, in addition to the 2 others we made suggestions on, the setbacks and screening. Okay. The next one on this page is signal interference. So this was one of the things we discussed as a topic. And this just really, again, is it should minimize and mitigate impacts to television signals, microwave signals, agricultural GPS, military defense radar, radio reception, and weather Doppler as outlined by the state statute. So this is really just defaulting to state statute on this. Questions on that one? I'm still a little bit, no one's looking, sorry.
I just don't know how we would enforce that.
I don't
How we
either.
don't know if it's interrupt agriculture GPS or military defense radar.
Well, if it's military, they'll come and take care of that, yeah. I know if it's FAA, they usually come and take care of that too. They have more means and methods than we have as a county. I agree with you. We don't have a lot of it. So the next one on page 117 of the UDO looks at decommissioning. So currently, we require them to update their decommissioning plan every 5 years, or if the property owner, operator, or project owner changes, we're striking project owner. This is one that's just kind of been on that list to address eventually. Basically, if Joe owns a farm and, part of that is leased by the solar and he splits off 2 acres for his son to build a house in the front or back or wherever it is, that'd be a change in ownership. They have to come update their decommissioning plan. We don't want that much paperwork. So if the family member who owns it passes away and it goes into a trust or it goes into the kids, that's an update of a property owner. It's too much paperwork, it's not needed because nothing's changing, if that makes sense. But if that owner or operator changes, we absolutely want them to come update that decommissioning plan. And then the second one on this was a suggestion from you guys at the last meeting, is that if it does change though, so if farmer sells or it's passed down through inheritance or anything of that nature or split off, that they do have to If the ownership of a parcel and or easement related to the project changes, the owner or operator shall obtain a record and record a signed and notarized affidavit from the new parcel owner. So we already require affidavits of responsibility, which is where this is under that section, if you read the first part of that. We require an affidavit to be recorded that basically says that property owner understands they're ultimately responsible because they're the property owner. So if it does change, they have to at least update that and record it.
What if they don't want to allow an easement?
Well, it's an easement holder, so you have to go, like, if you've got an established easement, there's multiple parties to that easement. And so they have to go through a process to undo an easement, yeah, which basically is require everybody in that easement agreement to say, we're good, you know, get undo the easement. No, good question. Anything else on that one? Okay, so then the next one is talking about liability insurance. We currently require commercial liability insurance, so if somebody trespasses, gets, you know, hurt or whatever, they have commercial liability. Most businesses carry that. This was adding in a additional insurance requirement for environmental liability, so there are multiple forms of this, from my understanding. Again, there's the liability as in, I start to build on a site and I realize there's previous, you know, contamination or something. That's not what we're talking about here. This is for any, again, cleanup or pollution from unexpected releases of pollutants on the site. So again, what we've recommended, and you'll see the red changes here, this was just a clarification. We were able to find an EPA standard on this, that we have said that if the project owner can basically say that there's nothing hazardous that they're using, a lot of solar panels nowadays, my understanding is that they do not have hazardous materials in them. Some do, some don't. But the the TCLP from EPA, that is the standard that evaluates does it have hazardous materials or not. So if it's certified as that, we're good. If it's not, then it possibly has hazardous materials. So we just clarified that basically this is saying you have to purchase some environmental liability insurance if we know there's gonna be hazardous materials within your equipment on site. This is one we have gotten a couple comments as well on. So that's again up for you guys to kind of consider. David.
Well tested. Are you getting something like that, or?
We are not. We discussed that last meeting as well. Wells are pretty well regulated by item. So with the public well, they're doing daily or, you know, super frequent testing. If it's a private well, again, we have watershed plans for all of those, or, you know, that are filed with IDEM. There's other testing and monitoring that's going on, so we did not include anything on well testing in here.
Wouldn't we? Shouldn't we?
I don't think it's necessarily personally needed, because I think we have other folks kind of monitoring that, meaning IDEM and other agencies, but that was kind of the discussion we had last month.
Well, today's, yeah.
Yeah, so just giving you, I knew you weren't there, so
And
that's
I know
fine.
you was reading all that, and I'm thinking, well, where's the well testing if we're looking at all this stuff? It was just a question.
Yeah, and again, this is up to you guys.
One
I'm
town that
just,
has all their water out on Avenue Washington Road, and
so if it's a public
With the
well,
whole town.
they're already doing constant monitoring from IDEM, that's a requirement, so they're doing that already. Like if it's a public water source, they're doing a lot of testing already. And I can't tell you the extent of that, but I know there are, a lot of violations sometimes with that, and they have to give public notice for those violations. So if you wanna
I don't think
consider,
about violations, I think about human people drinking it.
Right.
You don't wanna be a lead town,
yeah, are you relating to public wells or private wells?
So it sounds like the public wells are covered.
Yeah, it's public.
Private wells would be the concern, right? I may bring up what.
Right, public wells are pretty well monitored, they have a lot of
I have
complaints
a
and
well,
water
and sometimes I
testing.
wonder, you know, when I look at the glass, I'm thinking,
On the public wells?
don't drink it.
You say public well,
He
water?
said it's well.
Yeah.
Oh, your well, your
Yeah,
personal.
my own well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So that, again, these are up to you guys, and that's why I have a Word document, so we can strike through and underline anything that you might feel is necessary. And that's the end of those. Because the next one goes back to the fire committee.
Yeah, I have one question.
Yes, Aaron, yeah.
This is going back to the the well water, like if you have a gas station or something like that, they have to monitor the water before it leaves that property. Is that something we need to be concerned with? If
Talking about
they're in-
stormwaters?
Like a drainage water?
I'm not 100% sure on how that all works. Yeah, 'cause especially, yeah, if it's drained, whatever it is, especially if it doesn't meet that TCLP.
Yeah, so I can address drainage for you. Specifically, this board does not deal with drainage. We have, as a county, we have a drainage board. So they kind of have jurisdiction and they have a whole drainage ordinance that controls whether it's runoff or, we don't, that is, Brian Dixon is the one who kind of sees that. So they have monthly meetings and public hearings, just like you guys do. And we default all drainage questions, comments, regulations to our drainage board. So if it's stormwater protection and again, that's being, I think, updated now anyway because of IDEMS. They've got some new rules after Rule 5.
I don't know that the drainage board, I don't know that this commercial solar farm would go in front of the drainage board.
They will if they disturb more than 1 acre. So the current rule is that any project or site that disturbs more than 1 acre, and it can be over multiple parcels, has to go before drainage board for approval. The new rule coming down from IDEM, which was Rule 5, but now got replaced, is gonna be 10,000 square feet now has to have stormwater protection plan, so what? And so even a house nowadays is gonna at least have to show Brian Dixon, not us, Brian Dixon on a plan, they're gonna put up a silt fence or they're gonna do whatever. That's coming down from IDEM because the whole county's going to MS4. So, that's.
Well, that's erosion control.
Right, erosion control is 10,000, but the drainage board drainage board approval is required for any site or project that disturbs 1 acre or more.
Okay.
So that's when our major subdivisions always fall into that.
Maybe that needs to be specified that even a
It-
commercial solar farm in
it
an
is,
agricultural
yeah.
district.
And we do have that, again, all of those things within that district require drainage board approval. I think there are some state allowances for farming, because that's, like row crop and stuff isn't considered disturbance, but.
So would we expect the drainage board to address water quality issues?
That's what their ordinance does, they do stormwater, they do drainage, erosion control, that's all those, that's under their jurisdiction.
You're talking stormwater and drinking water, just two different.
Those are two totally,
Two
but
totally different
somebody talked about
concepts.
drainage, so I said I'm gonna talk about drainage.
Well, I'm
in
gonna say,
particular.
I'm not 100% sure how that all works. I just know that they have to test water before it leaves their property. And is that gonna be the drinking water tested to see if there's any contamination? Is that?
That would, I'm not sure that that's true, that a gas station has to test, they may have to meet certain water quality
I think
requirements.
underground storage tanks have some
I don't-
EPA regulations.
Just, they may have a detention basin, but they're not testing that water when it's hitting the outfall.
Unless there's some type of occurrence.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Now, if you
that all
have
falls back to IDEM.
If you have a permit for discharge, that's different, like if you have any PBS.
Yeah,
If you have a national permit for discharge, there are rules and regulations for that, but again, not governed by us, that's governed by drainage board
Nothing that they
and
test.
other people.
Check the water as it runs off.
Yeah, so that's kind of, sometimes we have those old combined sewer systems, the CSOs, and they have, that's a point discharge, they have to do testing on that and report any time that the sewers overflow into the creek and all that kind of stuff.
so part of the MS4, what they do is they go out and they do outfall inspections.
Yes,
They may
that's-
go inspect an outfall at a gas station to make sure there's no sheen on top of the water, or the creek downstream to make sure there's not an oil sheen
Right.
or something like that. If there is, then they track back and address the issue.
And that's where our drainage and
That's
stormwater
MS4,
ordinances as
Brian
a
did.
county right
So
now.
that would be the same thing.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if there'd be any outfalls involved, because they're not gonna have detention basins requirements that I know of, unless the drainage board.
The drainage from understanding is just pre versus post, so you can't increase your grade like your runoff and stuff, so, and you can't let erosion, come off site. So those are all of the amendments that are proposed. Do you guys have any other questions? If not, we can do public comment. I'm gonna look towards Connie and David Nahan on, I think that's the next is public comment, if you guys don't have any other questions.
I would just like to ask that before the public comment, perhaps you or Mr. Nahan, the seller, someone could clarify for the audience the role of this board
Yes.
and basically providing guidance to the council that
Yeah, and I
those
know,
projects would need to come through for special exception permits and.
that is good, yeah, I know that a couple of you guys had mentioned, and I said I would mention that as we did go through. Currently, commercial solar energy systems, commercial solar basically, is only permitted as a special exception within the ag district. So that still means that it has to go to the BZA, it has public notice to every adjoiner, it requires a public hearing where all of those adjoiners get your 3 minutes, that's where the 3 minutes comes into play. And we have a big public hearing, and the BZA makes a approval or denial based on 6 findings of fact that are outlined in our ordinance. So these regulations these amendments as proposed do not affect that at all. So nothing's still permitted by right. If one is approved, it still has to go through a development plan approval. So it's basically, they send us all their detailed drawings, we make sure they're complying with every, thing in our ordinance. When that's approved, then they still have to go get building permits, from Jason over here, and they have to go through all the required inspections for that. So there's multiple steps in that process, and that's not being proposed to be changed. So they still, right now, the way our ordinance is, there will still be a public hearing for any commercial solar energy system that is proposed before the BZA. So it would go to BZA for approval on that. And we have, I know there's been a couple questions about the history of our ordinance. The current amendments current solar regulations that we have in this chapter, those came back in 2022. And it was kind of responding to this use becoming, emerging within the county. Prior to that, we didn't have any use standards on those. So this is kind of an evolution of that.
Thank you.
And you guys will make a recommendation to the commissioners, and the commissioners are the ones who actually have the vote on that.
Thank you.
David, did you,
I thought this
sorry.
went back to the plan zone and BZA after us.
What's that?
I thought you mentioned that.
No, I said if a solar company they don't come to the planning commission, they have to go to the BZA.
The only reason they ever come is if they're not zoned ag, and they need to be rezoned, but then they have a public hearing here, and they have another public hearing at BZA. But
From here to the commissioners, is where it's going.
for these ordinance amendments, yes, correct, from here to the commissioners for these ordinance
Right now,
amendments.
do we have any applications for any?
We have historically had one, last year, and that went to BZA, and, that one in particular was not approved.
And this,
Right.
There's, I think, probably some, but we don't have any actual applications or know exactly what's coming in either.
None at all.
No, none, we not have any applications right now.
this UDO was originally, 2021.
So yeah, it was enacted enacted in January 1st of 2021.
Okay,
Yes,
so
and then-
how long was public comment open to the ordinance as it is today?
For the first one,
Yes.
it was a couple of months.
Okay.
Because I think we went to Plan Commission in November, and this is going off memory. And it was published a number of weeks before that. So at least November,
So I
December.
had very little participation.
Yes, correct.
We have more now.
Correct, on a topic. Yes. And that's usually how these things, again, when we talked about when we adopted the ordinance, we did specifically a 6 or 12-month assessment no matter what, because it should be a document that is functional. If we need to clarify something, let's clarify it. So as things change over the time, but again, you will have amendments to your ordinance, that's what you should be doing.
Right.
If you don't amend it, then you're probably not reacting to something that needs to be addressed. So. Questions? I've talked for a while, so.
Okay, very good.
Alright, I am gonna move my stuff now.
Thank you, Amy.
Yep, thank you guys.
Tonight. With your permission, we might let them speak first, so that they can give us their insight on the proposed ordinance amendment.
Sounds good to me.
Between you two gentlemen,
Who's the first one?
have you signed up, Mr. Applegate?
I signed up, I did not sign up as an attorney, I am an attorney, but I'm not here on behalf of anyone other than myself as a resident of Jeffersonville and Clark counties.
We'll go by your list. Why don't we let this gentleman speak first? He's from way up north, correct, sir?
And there are 23 property owners on the list, just to give you guys a heads up.
I need to get a hold of that application. I need an attorney. I need a real estate attorney like that. I don't know. I think it was over this. I have to ask him. I heard that name. I was like,
And I suggest we go by the list instead of letting the lawyers speak first.
Okay. So my name is Jason Kuchme, and I'm an attorney with the law firm of Snyder, Morgan and Kuchme, 4211 Clubview Drive in Fort Wayne. And as the plan director noted, and I gave a list of the households that I represent, but there's 23 households that I'm speaking on behalf of here tonight. And they've asked me to touch on several important topics with respect to your proposed amendments to the solar ordinance. Just by way of background, I've been heavily involved in solar issues for the past several years in over 20 counties throughout Indiana. In Madison County, Pulaski, Elkhart, Noble, Howard, Porter, Delaware, Wabash, Rush, Fayette, and many others as well. I've been involved in all manners of litigation involving solar issues, including revisions to ordinances, tax abatement proceedings, special exception proceedings, case in front of the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, and so on. So it's really been involved in all different aspects and angles of commercial solar. I've seen a lot of ordinances, obviously. I've heard a lot of arguments. I've seen what commercial solar can do to a community, not the least of which is division among the residents. You're going to see that. Loss of jobs and the removal of many thousands of acres of farmland from production. As you'll see, once you approve a project, then comes phase 2, then comes phase 3, then comes the next company, followed by another company. And at last count, Pulaski County had over 25,000 acres of farmland under lease with commercial solar. Now, just one of these projects alone is going to utilize thousands of acres. You're going to have hundreds of thousands of these giant panels, the substations, the cables, the inverters, and everything else that goes into it. I mean, there's some photographs I'll show you later in the binders, but they're industrial utility plants, is what they are. And they could change the face of your county long term. So it's very important that you get it right, that you do have proper regulations in place, be responsible, protect the county, protect the residents of the county, both, the non-participating property owners as well, but while still allowing for proper development. Over the last several years, I've gathered and I've learned a lot of information regarding some of the downsides of these projects. Studies do show that commercial solar utilities will negatively impact neighboring property values. The effect generally is seen from 3 miles and in, and the impact is obviously greater, the larger the project is or the closer the development is as well. The Pulaski County Board of Zoning Appeals, when they were considering a special exception on the case that I was involved in, they made a finding that it was, and this is a quote, "It was undeniable and unavoidable that a significant number of the 220 homes within 1 mile of the proposed site would see a decrease in property values." Now, in the binder that I had put in front of you there, tab 1, just so you have it in front of you, that was just an excerpt from a Court of Appeals decision, and I've highlighted some of the language where they noted, that exact quotation there from the BZA. And tab 2 in your binder actually contains a summary that was put together by a licensed appraiser of a number of different peer-reviewed articles and studies that were done on property values, and again, they all support the same conclusion that there is a negative impact on property values. I've also had the occasion, I've spoke to local Indiana brokers, and they confirm the obvious, people, they don't want to live near these projects. The sales have been lost, offers have not been made, they've been pulled, people would cancel viewings. They just don't want to view homes that would be going up for sale near these projects. Basically the market dries up. I've been in a lot of proceedings where I've heard representatives from the solar companies actually try to argue not only is there no harm, but I've even heard some suggest that property values go up. And I'll just say, if you hear somebody say that, look carefully at what they're presenting. Some of the sales where they were representing this was where the solar company actually purchased the property at a higher price. Normal folks, they don't want to live near these. They certainly don't want to be surrounded by these on multiple sides, as many folks unfortunately find themselves. Tab 3 in your binder includes some of the statements that were obtained from some local brokers here in Indiana. And then go back here, I think those are kind of out in Madison County or Dickinson County, out in that area, but certainly here within Indiana. And when you put these solar utilities in agricultural districts, you're destroying the rural character. And again, as I noted, you're taking important farmland out of production. The adequate farmland is critical, obviously, to the nation's food supply. And frankly, it's a national security interest. And these solar utilities, the one thing I think everybody can agree on is they use a lot of land. That can't be disputed. They do increase runoff, they result in soil loss. I've been told, I'm not a farmer, but I've been told that it could take generations to recover the fertility on that land at the end of this 30 years, if ever. So it's not just simply the case where at the end of 30 years, you pull these panels out and you pretend like the project never happened. I've also learned, these projects, these developments, they don't really benefit the local communities, as is often suggested. The electricity is sold to the grid, it's sent out to, who knows where, it's not staying local. Solar companies, and this I found interesting, their own experts, in some cases that I've been involved with, have admitted that their projects will result in a loss of jobs in the counties where they're located. So when these projects, when they go up and running, you can count on one hand, how many new jobs are going to be created. You've got one, maybe two people who just kind of keep an eye on it, maybe maintain the property. But on the other side of the equation, when you start taking all these thousands and thousands of acres of farmland out of operation, that's going to result in a loss of jobs. You're going to have less sale, less seed, less fuel, less labor, less taxes, and you go down the line, and those losses are significant, and they would far outweigh, I'm seeing at least, any perceived benefit. And in tab 4 on your binder, there's a report that was done by a professor at Michigan State University, and that report was on a proposed project in Indiana. And then there's also the same tab, there was an analysis of that report that was done by a North Carolina University professor. And again, he just summarizing the other report found that the negative impact on the local economy could be, in his words, staggering. And so just kind of having painted that picture with all the concerns surrounding these solar utilities, what do I see other counties doing? One way where the county can offer protection is to limit where these can go. Some counties talk about excluding the use of prime agricultural land, for example. Certainly I've seen other counties put limits on the number of acres of farmland that can ultimately be utilized in the county. Because I've seen everyone, they come in, well, we're only using 0.5%, or we're only using 1%. Well, that's you, but when you get the next one, the next one, the next one, these things, they add up, and they add up quickly. And so tab 5 of your binder, just as a point of reference, there was an excerpt from Madison County, from their solar ordinance, and they included a cap on prime farmland of 10%. So again, just maintaining this important prime farmland while still allowing for some development. Some counties, in their ordinance, they require a very detailed fire safety plan. It's something very important. You touch on it a little bit. I would say maybe you can consider expanding on that. Again, just making sure the equipment can get inside, making sure that there's room for the equipment to maneuver. How are these responders going to be trained, and do they have the right equipment? And frankly, I think the solar company, if they don't have the right equipment, the solar company should be the one providing the right equipment, for the county. These solar utility fires, they're not normal fires. You don't go there with a hose and put these fires out. And this is an important one, but I've seen many counties impose property value guarantees in their ordinance to protect the non-participating property owners. That is something that my clients would like to see. Obviously, I've talked a little bit about the negative impacts on property values, and just to share a personal experience, there's a proceeding I had in another county which really kind of underscores, I think, the need for this. In that case, I was in front of a BZA where they were, the solar company was looking for a special exception, similar to your process. And that, after the public part of that closed, the solar company representative actually interrupted the BZA's deliberations and threatened to sue if they imposed a property value guarantee. Well, when somebody said, well, why would that even be an issue, right? Because the solar company spent all night arguing there would not be a negative impact. And I'll just tell you, the look on their faces and the stunned silence just told everybody everything they needed to know, that not even the solar company believed their own rhetoric. So,
What amendment does this have to do with?
I'll be fair and not interrupt you when you speak, sir. So while many counties have included property value guarantee provisions, I know some have, where I've been in front of them, they've expressed a desire to do so, but they, how do I enforce these? I don't think they're questioning whether they could. I don't think there's an issue on enforcement, but nonetheless, when you go back to that Madison County excerpt that I had with a cap, they had a nice approach to it. And in Madison County, they will not issue a permit for construction until property value guarantee agreements are entered into and filed with the planning department. So that just takes that concern right off the table, right there. You're protecting the neighboring properties. There's no issue of enforcement because they're not even getting a permit unless they've already got these in place and have those agreements with the other property owners. And then another very important thing that's coming up across the state, and it's something that I think you need to consider in your ordinance, and it's not touched on at all, and it's the battery storage systems. And I don't know how much you've looked into these, but I do find it a little concerning that there's no ordinance at all that addresses these in Clark County. Now, these storage systems are basically rows of rechargeable batteries, which are usually the lithium-ion batteries. They're housed in interconnected storage units, and each of these is like literally, they look like a semi-trailer, and there's just row upon row upon row of these semi-trailer looking rows of batteries. And they store the energy for later use, and they frankly pose some big dangers. Between 2017 and 2019, there were 23 battery storage fires in South Korea, resulting in damages of $32 million. There was another in the UK that burned for about 7 hours before firefighters even tried to combat it because they didn't know what to do with a fire involving energy-dense technology. There was a fire and an explosion at a facility in Arizona. The COO of that company, he said the facility worked by and large the way it was intended, and we still had an event. Basically there, a battery rack caught on fire and burned. The gases, they built up inside the container, and there was an explosion when the first responders opened the door.
Palestine.
The team of the firefighters was injured, and there was significant damage. Another article that I read indicated that high-profile fire incidences at these battery storage facilities have started to affect insurers and their appetite to provide energy storage insurance coverage. So again, with all of these safety concerns, and Clark County doesn't even have an ordinance that attempts to regulate those facilities. And I would just submit there's a lot of things that the county needs to look at and can be done to protect the county with the design and siting requirements, require separation of the battery containers and the major equipment, such as the transformers and the substations, have firewalls between the containers, setbacks, lot sizes, impose insurance requirements, and there's a lot that can be done. And I really would implore you to consider that. Tab 6 in your binder includes some pictures of a solar project in Stark County, Indiana. When they were doing that development, they brought in the heavy equipment and they literally removed all of the topsoil from that farmland. That is the value of the farmland. That destroys the farmland. It destroys the ability to return to farming, not to mention the flooding problems that would create. Other ordinances do require the land to be returned to the same condition that it was before the solar project. They have provisions like that as part of the decommissioning part of the ordinance. Some require solar testing before and throughout the project. And these are all important things that my clients would like to see added to what you are considering here tonight. And certainly my clients are asking that no site should be graded more than 10% of the surface area, and then also to limit the removal of the topsoil like you're saying there. Tab 7, just trying to give you some more pictures so you can see what these kind of look like. This is a project in Ohio, And just another example of what these projects looks like when they're up and running and some of the flooding issues that they create. And I know not too long ago, when I was talking to my clients, they said a tornado had come through locally here, and it flipped, I think it was 5 semis in front of the county building, and they told me 2012 that a school was destroyed by a tornado. And now they're telling me that one of these proposed solar projects is being contemplated in that same path, where that tornado went through. Tab 8 in the binder just shows some panels that are damaged by wind and by hail. Some of these are from projects here in Indiana. There are many components in these panels. They include lead and they include cadmium. And every one of these panels contains lead. That's how they solder the pieces together using the lead. And so while probably each panel themselves is a small amount, when we're talking hundreds of thousands of these panels. Is that my time?
Yes.
All right. But I would ask, the only thing I would say in final is tab 9, I've included copies of a moratorium from 3 other counties in Indiana, where they have put a moratorium pausing the application of commercial solar.
Let's go.
Yeah, okay. Ironically, Jason was the first one actually on the list, ironically. The next one on the list is Sandy Basham. What, or no, we did 2 minutes, correct? Yeah, 2 minutes.
Yes, 2 minutes.
Scared. I don't know if you guys have all of them. That's why I brought it.
Just clarification, this board, even though we set rules, we can modify those rules. If we want to continue to hear what someone has to say, we can continue to hear it, correct?
No.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead. It's Sandy Basham, 15219 New Market Road, Marysville, Indiana. And to address what you had said earlier, had we known that this was up in 21, we would have been here. But, you know, we need a better system for that. I mean, not everybody reads a newspaper anymore. Maybe if we put it on the website, county website, that would help. People would know what's going on. I wanted to address in February, Amy mentioned that the 250-foot setback would better align with State Bill 411. But she also told you guys in that meeting that she would look at more, that she'd look at bigger setbacks if you guys wanted bigger setbacks. And you guys said yes. But today we come here and all we have is a 250 recommendation. So I was just kind of wondering where that went. The packages that you've got is a lot of residents that have sent in emails regarding this over the last few weeks. And I guess I would just like to know, like tonight, how you guys have got tons of stuff and how you could justify making a decision tonight with having just a minimal amount of time to look at what you've got. I mean, I've been researching this for a long time, and I promise you, I don't know everything there is to know about solar. So I know we had a meeting with Jack and Connie and Amy, that was back in January, and we discussed 28 things. And 10 of those is what you guys are basically looking at. So there's still a lot more. And I'm not saying that, you know, there isn't some way to work this out, but you know, keep in mind those 28 things that we asked for are already in UDOs within the state of Indiana. They're already there. They're in somebody else's UDO. So I guess what I would ask if this was, you know, what my wish list would be if we could put a moratorium or do something where we could set up a committee and not have people who aren't involved in this. I mean, there's plenty of people here against it. There's plenty of people here for it. That if we had a committee set up where we could make decisions.
Thank you. All right. The next one on the list is Christy Horsley.
Christine Horsley, 22417 Main Road, Marysville, Indiana. I want to speak to you all about the
the wildlife corridors. As an animal lover, we met with two of the three commissioners back, two of the three commissioners and their contracted employee Amy over here back on January the 24th of 2024 about our requested UDO proposals. Like I said, what I want to talk about is the wildlife corridors. We ask that any area of 35 plus acres that are fenced in have animal corridors, and any area of 300 acres fenced in within a 500 acres have a wildlife reserve of no less than 40 acres to protect the wildlife and allow them to feed there instead of on the adjacent farm owners. And there's a lot of farmers out here today. And they'll be eating their crops, which is gonna make it really hard for them. The counter proposal we got on 3/26 of 2024 addressed 1,500 acres fenced in before providing animal corridors, and that's not what we discussed, and that's what we got. This does not take care of the wildlife we all know and love, and the wildlife and farmers will lose, while once again, the solar company sitting out here will win. I ask that you all reconsider these things and place a moratorium on this tonight. I know I've mentioned it before when we've met and talked. A moratorium would give time to get all this straightened out until all the concerns are fully covered in the UDO. And I ask this because the Clark County residents and our wildlife deserve better. We deserve better. Those for solar and those against solar, we all deserve better. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next one is Jerry Brooks.
Gerald Brooks, 6107 Tom Mill Road, Charlestown. I'm here tonight just to ask you to accept these enhancements to the commercial energy solar system section of the Clark County UDO. That's been proposed by your consultant. In addition, I ask you to earnestly consider the additional amendments or enhancements to the UDO that have been proposed and will be proposed yet here tonight. As you're aware, Clark County is one of the fastest growing counties in the state. Demand for our land and resources currently is being outstripped, or is currently outstripping our supply. I receive offers to buy my property nearly weekly from all across the United States. The supply-demand imbalance places Clark County in a position where we can demand the best, demand the highest quality. To ensure highest quality, you must have the highest standards. Low standards always result in low quality. Clark County can set standards that will drive the quality that we should be striving for. We can set the bar. We do not need to accept state averages as our guide. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one is Paul Staley. And if we can address for you, that'd be perfect. I didn't have that written down.
Sir, is there a green light at the bottom of that base there?
It's on.
Push the button. It's on.
Oh, right there?
Yeah. Is it on now?
It's on.
Yeah.
It's on.
Okay, good, thank you.
Is that important?
People in the back here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Paul Staley, 12719 Charlestown New Market Road, Marysville, Indiana. And my concern is about the water quality and everything. The New Washington Water Company has water wells that are in the northern part of the county there, and it supplies 1,750 households, 4,000 customers in the New Washington schools. And part of the solar panel proposal puts them panels across the road from the water wells. And as these solar panels are put in, you're gonna change the flow of the water, and that's gonna be put into fertile farmland, and you're gonna have a lot of erosion and filtration problems, and that could lead to failure as part of the infrastructure of the water company. And I think you ought to have some kind of proposal that has the solar panel companies kind of responsible for monitoring the water. And I think this needs to be addressed with the UDO and have setbacks from these water wells. I think there ought to be a moratorium put on it to address these issues. My 10-year-old grandson would be close to 50 years old at the end of the project, and he and his sisters have to deal with this. So don't rush into these plans, and we just need to get them right. Thank you.
The next one is Kelly,
Curry.
Curry, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, y'all. By the way, could I remind you to introduce yourselves, because some of y'all don't know your faces.
We need your name and address.
Kelly Curry, she's got it. Kelly Curry, 4819 Salem Noble Road, Jeffersonville, Indiana.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm here on behalf of the Utica Township Fire Protection District as a trustee. My comments are going to pertain to Amendment 4. There will be a paragraph, like the gentleman said, what's it got to do with the amendment? Well, I'm going to tell you. The lawyer over here mentioned the BESS systems. Did you know that we currently have 2 of these battery energy storage systems? One in Underwood, the other in NAB. We have no regulations. We have no ordinance. Okay, we need some protection. You all have seen the electric vehicle car fires on the news. They think they've got to put out, the next thing you know, it reignites, thermal runaway, and maybe even explode as a rule. Lyme, New York had one of our systems like we have up at NAB, caught fire, had thermal runaway. They sheltered in place the residents at 4 in the afternoon. At 9 at night, they released them back. Fire was out. Okay, fire reignited the next day. They did nothing but let it burn. Our firefighters have told they need to stand down. They don't go into that. I've talked to all of them, okay? There's been training offered by Monroe. Some of the, Utica didn't go, I'm ashamed to say, it's gonna change. New Washington, the local area, did not participate in this. They brought a guy from Abu Dhabi, paid him $11,000. They, Monroe and the EMA and some of our county firefighters did not participate. You know, vehicle fires are one thing, but these huge trailers with these 10 megawatts of storage, mega, not a little electric car vehicle with average 70 kilowatts. This is 10 megawatts that is stored. And we have nothing to protect our people, and I'm appalled. I couldn't even believe they were here. I had no idea. And matter of fact, some others had no idea these were in the county, right? All right, so I demand that something is put in there. Oh, thank you all. I was getting fired up and I got more, but that is
Sorry. Pam is next.
No me. I need a drink.
Dan Christiani, 9621 Highway 62, Charlestown, Indiana. And just my past experience with all of this is, is that why don't we have to require a bond to protect us? What happens when these people, we have to put up bonds for things.
We do require a bond. We do.
You require a bond for this? And but I know I did a wetlands thing and it cost me $148,000 for bond the state, and all we're doing is building a wetland. We're not doing what they're doing. And so, I think that bonds and protected for a period of years too, not just for them to complete their job. I'm talking about a bond that stays for the whole time they're there, because they might sell out to somebody else and somebody else buys, and then they're back. And nobody wants to take responsibilities. And I know we've had problems in the county before with roads and not having a bond on roads, and we got that corrected. And so, we need to stand for what we stand for and back up what we stand for. So I just feel like that we need to have a specific bond and a big enough bond because of inflation and everything else going on. And I just feel like too, and you've heard people so far, I think that we need a little more time to work this out. I think we need some panels to sit down and stretch this out. I mean, pros and cons. We need to have both people in there. And so we can really talk it out, because I think it can be worked out, but I think we need to work it out in a civil way. And then, the wells and
and test them all for that, and then also soil testing. They're saying that the ground will go back to farming. Well, I feel like you gotta do soil testing when they take possession of that property, and when it goes back, it ought to have soil testing. At least came up to that specification. Thanks, Dave.
Dave and Anita Tillett. Sorry for mispronounced names tonight.
I'll go ahead and get started while she's handing the pictures out. Dave, I need to tell it 9102 Zimmerman Road, Marysville, Indiana. And the pictures we handed out, this is our place here, and you can look at it from the road. That's a black fence around that. That's our property line there. So even with 250 feet, it's not enough for that. It's going to destroy our property value. We put a lot of money into this place, and that was our retirement home, and it won't be worth anything if we put a solar field, because if you look at the back, right there where the green is, that's like 30 feet past the property line there. And if you go from the foundation of your house, that's less than 150 feet there where that green grass is. So the 250 feet, I thought we was going to discuss that further, where we could ask for 1,000. We come back with 250. Well, Bright Night in the first meeting said they would give us 250 feet, and that's not even enough. Because when you circle this with solar fields, tell me who in the world would buy that house at fair market value? And look me in the eye, nobody would buy that house. They'd be crazy to buy that house. So that's why we're asking for more setback. I'm not totally against solar, don't get me wrong, but I just don't want it right here on me where it's gonna destroy what we worked all of our lives for. For somebody just to come in and take all that away from you, it's not right, and it's not fair. So that's pretty well what I want to talk about, and I heard somebody make a comment. Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, Bill Hopkins.
Thank you. I only produced 5 of these, and I apologize.
I'll let you give them to them then, just make sure you get one for the record.
We'll share.
You can pass them down, I appreciate it.
Okay.
My name is Bill Hawkins. I reside at 404 Bell Street, Bethlehem, Indiana. What you just received is an email. It's the body of the email I sent to Mr. Gettings, and there's also some data that is in the links in that, so I'm sure she's passed that email on to you, so you probably already read it, but this is hard copies of it for you. My concerns are the same that Mr. Christiani brought out. I'm in construction, I've been in construction 50 years, I've been in project management for 25. I understand how that we control and make sure that jobs get done and that nobody walks away from it. We put up bonds, and Mr. Christiani pointed out the bonds, and you said we've got some. I didn't see it in your thing. All I saw was the word surety. I didn't see anything that told me who provides it, how much it is, how long it lasts, exactly what Mr. Christiani pointed out. None of that was none of that's been delineated that I could find in your ordinance. Now, perhaps it's there. I didn't see it. I won't say I saw everything, but I didn't see anything that tell me where it was. The next thing I know is, in that email, I pointed out some plans that I thought that might help, if you consider it, about how you can actually make this happen. The last thing I'll say is that if these things are the gold mines that everybody's been saying they are to the landowners, then why aren't the developers buying the land, putting it in themselves, doing it, holding it? That way they can produce these things, they can have these fields up for as long as they want it. But they're doing leases. Why? Because a lease gives them an out. Your last thing that you put into the ordinance is a requirement that the landowner is responsible for the decommissioning.
And it takes that decommissioning away from the contract, it takes it away from the developer. The landowner is never gonna get enough money from these things to be able to pay for that decommissioning. So he's gonna walk away from that land. He's gonna get enough money to pay for the land, but he's gonna walk away from it whenever it's done. At the end of the project, he's gonna walk away, that's gonna give it to you guys to take care of and decommission.
Thank you.
Nancy Hempel?
Okay, hello, Nancy Hemphill, 512 North Frankie Road, Henryville, Indiana. My main concern is in the, what's going to happen to the soil and the water once this gets started. And I have two studies here from Science Direct, and they were very specific that the TCLP, which was mentioned earlier, the toxic characteristics leaching procedure, did show that broken solar cells would release aluminum, nickel, silicon, copper, lead, arsenic, and more into the soil and possibly the water. They found that the concentrations of these elements in the region were within toxicity characteristic limits. Now, we don't have enough studies on this. None of us are experts on this. And I can tell you right now that in the runoff, in the water table, we don't know what's going to get in the waters. And I know that we're told that some of these are safe. Well, good. I'm not an expert. None of us here are experts. We don't know which ones are safe and which ones aren't. We live in an area of tornadoes, hail, lightning, windstorms. These panels are going to get broken. When they break, they're going to release toxins into the soil and eventually into the water, the rain, the runoff. When that happens, when they clean up the area in 30 years' time, supposed to, dig about 48 inches down? Are you sure that's deep enough? You could dig to China if it gets in the water. We don't know. The only thing we know about 30 years is we're all gonna be dead. And it's gonna be our children's problem and our grandchildren's problem.
All right,
Forever chemicals.
Robbie Norrington?
Sorry, you'll have to edit that part out.
Robbie Norrington, 1213 State Street, New Albany. I'm with Indiana Laborers Union. We represent more than 13,000 construction laborers throughout the state. This project isn't merely about embracing clean energy. It's profound commitment to the local workforce. The construction phase alone will offer a wealth of employment opportunities for a diverse range of skilled local labor, including Laborers Local 795 members who live right here in Clark County. Aside from the laborers, this project will also employ local electricians and operators. This project will serve as a beacon of employment for the community. Once operational, the economic benefits of the community will be substantial. The solar farm will continue to bolster the local economy by creating a sustained demand for maintenance roles. This translates to a steady influx of jobs, providing stability to growth for years to come. The influx of the skilled workers and professionals needed for both the construction and maintenance phase will bring additional economic activity to the area, from increased spending to local business. The positive ripple effects of the project will be felt throughout the community. Furthermore, the solar will generate revenue for the county for property taxes. These funds can be reinvested in schools, infrastructure, community programs, and enriching the lives of all the residents. By building solar in Clark County, we're not only investing in renewable energy, but also investing in the heart of the community, the hardworking individuals who call this place home. We strongly ask the Commission to pass reasonable regulations for the landowners to use their land how they feel fit. Thank you.
Ray Potteller?
3 Westport Road. Planning Commission, Counselor, Clark County officials, thank you for the time this evening for the support of the Flag Run Solar Project in North Clark. The decision for my family to sign for a land lease was not done lightly for our family land. There was much time and effort spent reviewing and negotiating the land lease with Bright Knight. It was great to see the county officials had the wherewithal and the forethought to understand the presence of solar power and created the UDO. After all, Clark County already has a solar project that's owned by Hoosier Energy and it's working quite fine to specifications. It is also apparent that amending the UDO ordinance seems to take a heavy influence from the Indiana State Solar Standards and the Purdue Extension Solar Land Use Recommendations. For the new UDO, I would ask that the board accept a very practical set of UDO ordinance guidelines that are within the state limits. We should not be inclined to make the UDO ordinance guidelines so restrictive and prohibitive to do business that we would not be able to develop and attract new business in our county. There are many economic benefits, revenue generating opportunities for this project in our townships in North Clark, Washington Township, all of these municipalities. The county will relieve their budget by the revenue coming in from this project, tens of millions of dollars, and there's zero cost to the county. There's zero cost to the taxpayers, and there's zero cost to anyone in the township. No road tax, no school tax, no fire tax. I know that you board members are also a champion of landowner rights. This is extremely important that we keep that in mind and we keep it within ordinances. I ask that you support the Flag Run Solar Project and that we can find a balanced approach to meet the needs of all parties concerned. Amy has done a fantastic job. She's taken into science, technology, specifications, all the guidelines of the state and municipalities. Thank you. Thank you.
Joshua Mullins.
Folks in the back, you folks in the back, there are 4 seats available up front here.
Ladies. He's trying to get him up here. Now where he sits.
My name is Joshua Mullins. The farm is 7602 Henderson Road. My personal address is 7920 Henderson Road. I have not signed with anybody. I have talked about it with my family. I'm just perplexed that we have people in my end of the county trying to turn it into an HOA, you know, and regulate what you can and can't do on my own property. I get a little worried thinking, can I even paint my barn? You know, do I need to come down here and get approval from you people to paint my barn that's been there for 70 years? Or I don't understand it. I've never seen anything like it. As long as Purdue University, can you get better than that? Arguably the greatest land grant university in the nation. If you vote for these politicians at a state level, I don't know why you wouldn't believe what they're telling you. You know, if they're saying these meet the rules and Purdue's done the due diligence, I think it's, time to let us, and like I said, I haven't signed anything. I'm just saying, because the next thing might be grass height, and I like to leave grass a little high because I do like the wildlife. We have more rabbits and hawks around our place than anything. But that might all change, I guess. If the neighbor down the road can say he doesn't think his value is good because my grass is too high. Because that changes property values too. I know I've heard people say that. And that's just a big concern of mine. If we let this go, how far are we gonna go in this county where the whole thing is just one big HOA? And you can get fined for parking in your driveway, Where I live, you can still be a redneck and have a beat up car out there that doesn't run, nobody cares.
Barbara Anderson. Okay, I'll be right there. Oh, you're good, you're good. Take just a second. Hello.
Hello.
Barbara Anderson, 827 East Maple Street, Jeffersonville, Indiana. I've never been
anybody would probably wanna know why a downtown girl would care, cause I live in Clark County, Indiana. And I have family that have farms in Sellersburg and in Henryville and in Charlestown. And we grew up playing on those farms, and I married into some of those farms. So, it means a great deal to my family and to me, because, just as the gentleman said, you go down a slippery slope when you tell somebody what they can do with their own property. I live at 827 East Maple. I don't want anybody telling me what to plant in my yard, although somebody tried. It wasn't an experience they ever repeated, but they did try. And it wasn't much, it was a veal vegetable garden, and they thought I didn't have enough room to do that. I did it anyway, and they haven't bothered me since, and I still have my little vegetable garden. I think that, I guess what I'm trying to say is, I do believe that we all need to calm down, that's one thing. Having been through many public meetings in my lifetime, Connie, you've been a part of those, and they can be very, very passionate, because everybody believes firmly in what their position is. There's a compromise to be made here. You know, the future is upon us. Natural resources are diminishing. Solar power is proven. It does work. Solar panels have to be created. There's a new factory coming up in River Bridge. I just think that what we need to do is calm down a little bit, move forward, not backwards. Let a man do what he needs to do with his own property. And if it doesn't work this time, we'll know. But we aren't gonna know until we try. There's absolutely no way we're gonna know until we try. And I want us to understand as a community that we're neighbors. We need to support each other. And that's about where it stands for me.
The next one is Richard, I'm gonna mispronounce this one, is it Jericho?
Oh, well, that's okay.
You knew.
Richard Garuccio, 19109 Marysville Knapp Road, Marysville, Indiana. So I'm here to ask you to really consider these amendments, really consider changing the ordinances to allow larger setbacks, both from the edge of my property, but also from the roadways, to consider adding language to support regulation of the battery facilities. That was scary to me, just hearing that. But also to protect residential wells. I know there's not any language in there, and maybe some other department does cover it, but I think it should be considered. I think it should be added just so that you have an additional layer of protection for the residential people that have wells. I'd like for you to just consider supporting the average, not just the average family that lives in this area. If you could add language to secure the property value, not just the current property value, but also that grows with the rest of the county. So it will grow at the same rate. You know, because if I sign a property thing today, in 30 years, I can sell it for the same amount. That's not growing with the rest of the properties in the area. There's just a lot of things that need to be considered. I don't think we should rush to judgment as far as, like this is the best set of ordinances and that's it, never revisit it. But I also think that we should think about the landowners, even though they've already signed these leases, just to protect them from the responsibilities. So.
Next one is Jeff Bays.
Thank you. Jeff Bays, Highway 203, Lexington, Indiana. I bought my farm 40 years ago. I'm 65 now. I've been farming that farm for 40 years. That's what I do for a living. I'm a real farmer. When this company came to us we've been through enough things, that somebody offering you a lot of money when I was younger used to jump on things like that. I'm old enough now that I don't jump so high anymore. We took a lot of time and checking solar farms out. We thought about it for months. We didn't sign a contract for months. We finally did when we were satisfied and happy with it. We spent a solid month in the attorney's office with our contract, making sure that the contract protected us against anything happening. And it also protects the county. We made sure of that. We made sure our neighbors were protected. Setbacks are not a question on our farm. All that's been taken care of by us. Bottom line is, what I really want to say is, this is my farm. I've been farming it for 40 years, and I should have the right to make a good decision and do what I want with my farm. Thank you.
Okay, Max Zimmerman.
Max Zimmerman, 6616 Stoneville Road. And first question I got, how many full-time farmers in there do we have? Raise your hand. Full-time farmers. Okay. Well, Dan's full-time farmer, he works, but I mean, full-time farmers, no public work or nothing. Everybody knows farming is a tough life. I came out of Purdue in 1980, went farming. First 2 years I had to go to work. Farming's tough. It's not everybody can farm. So when they came to us, some of this ground has been in our family for 100+ years, very near and dear to our heart. We didn't take it lightly either, just like the first gentleman said in front of me. We talked about it, and we made a family decision. My daughter's here, my son-in-law's here tonight. They're gonna be the one that deals with it down the road, and we talked about it. The problem is with farming is you make money 1 year and lose it 2 years. Well, this year, most farmers probably gonna lose money before they even plant a crop. December of 23, corn was $6 a bushel. Soybeans were $14 a bushel. Today, corn for fall delivery, when it'd be picked in fall, it's $4.20. The beans are like $11.50. That's under production cost, even if they raise 200 bushel of corn and 50, 60 bushel beans. So what this does for my family is we'll still have farm ground that will be rented, but this also gives us diversified income. And that's what Purdue said. I went to Purdue and said, hey, what do you do? He said, you always want to diversify your income. And by having a solar lease like this, we will have income coming in every year, no matter if it rains, no matter snows. And plus, probably 30 years from now, the ground soil will be more fertile than it is today. Because what we do every year is we put fertilizer in there, but we're not letting that organic soil grow. In 30 years, you'll have more organic soil on top of that soil than you do today. So it goes, thank you.
Blake, next time.
How does solar get them money to pay these farmers? Well, I told you earlier. It's all balanced.
Hi. My name is Blake Schecksteiner. I reside at 19307 Barnes Road, Marysville. Here representing the rest of my family today. The intent, what I like to say, is propose additional amendments. I believe that should happen to the current Clark County UDO plan. It is evident that the current UDO plan does not contain enough rules and regulations to protect the current residents' wildlife habitat, environment, and aesthetics of industrial installation. We feel that Bright Knight Company has acquired a majority of leases, permits, and acquisitions in secrecy. As we understand, some of these land lease agreements were obtained within the last 2 to 3 years. This time frame also includes speaking to local governments and offices to obtain the permits and permissions required to begin the installation. It seems the company was attempting to obtain all permits so they could build solar installations prior to the greater majority of the residents finding out the proposed plan, so we could lose the opportunity to oppose. Since we were not given a choice if we wanted a commercial business next to our residents or not, we believe that we should have some say-so on how the business will affect our lives. If the show must go on, then at least we can have some rules and regulations in place that will protect our rights, property, and future. Please take your time in considering to add and or revise the UDO amendments. Thank you.
Pretty good.
Very good.
Donald J. Miller. Didn't know if you could hear me there.
That's a good compromise.
Hi, my name is Donald Millar. I live at 3235 South River Bluff Drive in Hanover, Indiana. For many years of my career, I was an expert in soil and water chemistry. I studied all over the country in ensuring that people were protected from contaminants in soil and water, specifically volatile organic carbons and heavy metals. I'm not a large landowner. I live in Hanover. I work from home, but I'm here to say that I'm in support of this project because my family moved here to Southern Indiana because of the growth and the development and all the things that were happening here. When I drive down to Sellersburg to go play tennis, I see apartments going up, I see new buildings, I see gas stations, I see tons of people on the road. Everyone in my neighborhood, everyone goes down to Clarksville to shop and go to Bass Pro Shop. And with all the growth that I see, I find the solar project it's a good partner for the growth of the community. And the future that we have is a future of growth, it's a future of building new buildings, it's a future of attracting high-tech industry. I'm not a landowner, I'm not a farmer, I gotta go and work for my living. I wanna stay here in Clark County, I want my brother and sister to stay here in Clark County, I want my kids to stay here in Clark County. And one of the best ways for that to happen is for us to attract cheap, reliable energy that is going to spur investment and development. That matters to me, that matters to my family, and we'd like to see a future of growth here. Thank you, everyone.
Troy May.
My name's Troy May. I live at 9009 Zimmerman Road. I'm here opposed to this whole solar thing. I think a moratorium was probably the best idea we could have right now. Too much information we don't know, too many things going on. You talked about the 7-foot high fence, but the 5.5 foot wall in between that and that, we're still gonna see it. It's just gonna be a mess. Feel like the big guys, the little people are pushing everybody else around on this with the farm owners. That's about all I got to say. Thank you. Thank you.
James Bauer.
James Bauer, I live on McIntyre Road, New Washington. I just want to say, I know there's a lot of concerns here, but we really need to look at the future. And I know the comment was made we wouldn't be here in 30 years, but hopefully maybe my son is, my grandson. So I think that's what we really got to really look at and plan for the future as well, not just today. So that's really about all I've got to say, but thank you.
Ryan Harold.
Evening, as we're getting closer to dinner and everybody's ready for dinner, I just like to thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Dr. Ryan Harold. I'm at 10016 Zolman Road. My wife and Candace Harold and I live out there, and it was on her family farm, and I know the farm's been in family for a long time. And as Max said earlier, this is not an agreement that was taken into lightly. It's something with a lot of due diligence and a lot of careful examination for each and every family. Bright Knight stated that the production for this is going to be about 70,000 homes, enough energy for 70,000 homes. As we start to look at renewable energy, Thomas Edison once said, "We are like tenant farmers, chopping down the fence around our house for fuel when we should be using inexhaustible sources of energy such as sun, wind, and tide." That this is the future, and as the young man just said a moment ago, this will also help to bring business and be more attractive to show growth in the area. As far as local and national economic impact, solar industry in the United States alone employs over 231,000 people. That generates over $1.5 billion through property and sales tax payments, and the most recent was in 2019. So these things can be reinvested into the local economy, as we mentioned, and I just want to encourage, as you guys have done your due diligence and you continue to, thank you for considering the solar project, and I think that you guys are on the right track with all the amendments. Thank you.
David Gill.
Thank you, board members, very much for your thoughtful consideration today, and for the work that you've already done in putting together the solar ordinance that was very well structured and put together. Lots of thought and I think study and effort was put into that. You have guidelines that meet or exceed Purdue extension requirements and state requirements in every circumstance except for that one residence setbacks to residences. The amendments here today, I want to focus on one thing which I think is going to be very problematic, and I want you to think about it, is the screening and have completely invisible solar project. We've talked about in the past 7-foot fencing, but these solar panels at max height are around 15, and so I think you're going to, if you go forward with this ordinance, you're going to be talking about 15-foot fencing, and in some places actually much higher, because there are some roads that are at a higher elevation than some farms by as much as 20 feet. And so in certain cases, you may have fencing that is in excess of 20 feet, and it's gonna have to have completely, be screened in. It's not gonna be see-through fencing, nor is that wildlife friendly. And so there's a lot of issues that could come about by this screening provision that is currently in your amendments. The wildlife friendly fencing is something that we've proposed in the past and would like to use, and making it completely not visible will prohibit us from being able to do that. Again, your existing rules and regulations are in a good place. Some of these amendments are helpful in creating extra protections for the community, and I'm in support of protecting the community as a company, and I think that's the right thing to do. But I'm also in support of thoughtful regulation that isn't going to create problems and headaches or lawsuits or issues or complaints in the future for all of you. So thank you very much. Sorry, David Gill, 515 North Flagler, West Palm Beach, Florida.
Dale Fields. Yeah. I'll do one more call for Dale Fields. Okay. How about Nick Kirkland?
Hi, my name is Nick Kirkland with Kirkland Appraisals. My address is 9408 Northfield Court, Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm a state certified general appraiser in 4 states, including Indiana. I have spoken at hundreds of boards like this regarding solar and impacts to property values over the past 6 years. We studied solar farms and their effects on property values, and what we found is that typically in rural areas with typical vegetative buffers of 1 to 3 rows and setbacks of about 120 feet from panels at home or greater, they do not have an impact on property values. Your ordinance as it is already protects neighbors' property values. Beyond that, we have surveyed 31 tax assessors from Indiana counties, none of which indicated that they see any basis for an impact to adjoining property values for being next to a solar facility. Additionally, I spoke with 5 brokers regarding 4 different transactions of homes that are adjacent to and in close proximity to the solar farm here in Clark County and Underwood. All of them said that the solar farm had no impact on the adjoining property values, it had no impact on the sales prices, and that it was a non-factor. Additionally, there are multiple university studies that have been done that all indicate in rural areas, solar farms do not have a negative impact on adjoining property values. one in particular notes in the abstract that it does have an impact of about 2%. But if you actually read the article, that 2% comes from urban areas, not from rural areas. And they explicitly say in rural and suburban areas, solar farms have no impact on adjoining property values. Lastly, property value guarantees are messy and unuseful, as an example for that being if the market takes a natural downturn and all of the nearby land, it goes lower in value, how do you differentiate a natural cooling in value to what a solar farm company would have to pay to adjoining property owners? Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Gary Pullum. Okay. Gary Pullum? Yep, okay.
Then why have all of our
So
taxes
his
gone up?
units-
Yeah.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak today. My name is Sophia Steens. I live at 6915 Maclodges Road in Boston, Kentucky. I own part of my family farm in Washington, which we've owned for 60 years. And I'm signed up on the solar project. I've heard a lot of people talk about the dangers of solar farms and stuff. One thing I haven't heard much is like the difference between that and what nobody thinks of is the dangers of modern agriculture practices. So my dad was a farmer. I'm sure some people in here knew him. He died from exposure to farm chemicals. And I don't know about anybody else, but I get ads on my phone for lawsuits against Monsanto. I don't know if anybody else gets those, but I get them. That's true. Yeah, so we also have to take into account, like, I'm not an expert on solar panels. I don't know what the risks truly are to produce. Says they're good, so I'm gonna go with that. But I have personal experience with farm chemicals, and those are not good for you. So like that bright green field of soybeans or corn that you see in the midsummer, it only looks like that because that stuff, those plants are genetically engineered to be resistant to all the poisons we put on the farm. And it's modern farming is not the nicest thing in the world for the environment. And my personal experience lately has been, I had a mammogram last week and they found a lump. I have to go back for more testing. I don't know if it is going to be anything major or just something transient or no big deal. But I might be part of a Monsanto lawsuit. So I'm going to keep speaking. So I don't know if
your time's up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Connie, and I'm gonna mispronounce your last name, Connie.
Neininger?
I was gonna be close.
Sounds
on
good.
that one. All right, Connie.
The number 9 Inger.
Neininger.
Good evening, Connie Neininger. I live at County Road 400 East in White County, Indiana. We have 7 wind farms, 1 solar project under, or actually 1 in operation and 2 solar projects under construction today. I am here to talk about my experiences. First of all, I commend the area plan for the work, the time and effort that you put into the current solar ordinances. A lot of this is about landowner rights. The most important thing to remember, if a landowner doesn't want this, they don't have to sign. There is no eminent domain. It is landowner's choice. And when you're looking at increasing setbacks, it's important to realize that you may actually be taking additional land out of production when you increase that setback. And as it was mentioned, that is actually could be unkept areas at that point in time. We do have concerns with your environmental insurance. That is something, I work for a national organization, the Center for Infrastructure and Economic Development. We work nationwide. We have never seen an environmental insurance policy in a solar ordinance to date. Vegetative screening along any public road, it is a concern because what if it's a road that has very minimal of any traffic going down it? And your annual permit, how many other businesses do you require to apply for an annual permit once they've received their initial permit? Again, that could be considered excessive. Our organization is here to help county officials. We review zoning ordinances, we provide commentary. We don't tell you what you should or shouldn't put in. We give you questions to ask, things to consider, such as a road use agreement and decommissioning bonds. Both of those should have bonds with them to protect the county and the residents. I live in White County. We've had these projects for over 14 years. I've talked with our White County Realtors Association, land values today.
Neil Spencer.
My name is Neil Spencer, 8223 Tunnel Mill Road, Charlestown, Indiana. Coming here today, I let nothing go down, wasn't going to speak tonight. But it's just a lot to take in on all this. After the fact that the Bright Night had passed their, to come back and do it with the commissioners, with the commissioner's office, they ended up sending me to you all. And I talked to Jason about a month or so ago about this issue. And I talked to someone in the office of the Planning and Board Commission, and I was got wrong information twice. And you called me down, David, said I was out of order a while ago, and I was told by their office that I would come to the meeting and you would set up everything and would go like you. That's why I brought that up. I wouldn't have brought that up, a bit out of order. But I was learned a long time ago that my parents taught me to make decisions that worked out for the best for yourself as well as others. And I learned it well from David and Elizabeth Spencer, my parents, who I took care of until both those died. They died, my mom died 9 years ago in October. And a lot of this, I do not understand why we were wanting to take nothing that was all farmland, and it was all farmland, nothing in New Washington, Marysville, Bethlehem, any of that area was nothing but farm. There was nothing. There was nothing but farm, chicken, tobacco, cattle, and you know, it's all about the money deal. It's everything. We're gonna fill this whole county up. We've done a good job with it down at the River Ridge. We built that up. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'll talk with you all again.
Good evening, the Planning Commission, and my name is Chris Coots, 5547 Head Road, Borden. I want to start off by saying that I am pro-farming. I grew up doing that. Growing up, it was putting food and a table and a roof over our heads. However, and with all due respect to many friends I have over on the side of the room, I am pro-solar. I think that there's a place for this. You know, they'll continue to be my friends, but I think there's a place for this if it's done properly. Thoughtful, well-considered plans can make this thing work. It's obvious that you guys have reached out to the authorities that have experience and have expertise in this area. I encourage you to continue to do that through this process and stay away from the so-and-so said this and so-and-so thought that type thing and anecdotal types of things. Stay with the facts and we'll get where we need to be on this and have the balance that we need. I wanted to just appear and add one more voice to the pro side and probably cut down on the number of Christmas cards I'm going to get next year. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Carrie Vaughn.
So, see me after this, okay? I've had the same thing, okay? Oh, this feels so good. Please, can I have 3 minutes in this chair? I am Carrie Vaughn. I live at 8513 Balmer Drive in Charlestown. So good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I'm Carrie. Let me begin by saying thank you for volunteering your time to serve as our planning commissioners. You're charged with deciding on some very difficult and sometimes controversial issues. And I've worked in politics for nearly a decade. And I can attest that public service can be both very rewarding as well as sometimes very stressful. So again, I appreciate you serving our community. When it comes to solar power, it's hard to know what is true and what is untrue, especially on the internet with its Google Science as well as Facebook, where solar opponents cite professional activist groups and their opinion-based studies and blog articles authored by so-called authorities that no one has ever heard of. My point is there's a lot of technical and specialized knowledge required to make informed decisions on industrial solar farms at the county level. I think it's fair to say that no one in this room can call themselves an expert in this field, no matter how many Facebook posts they have to their name. I'm asking you tonight to vote to keep the current ordinance standards and maintain the non-participating agricultural setbacks to 20 feet. I'm also asking you to protect the property rights of our Clark County family members, our family farmers. They're the economic backbone and fabric that makes up our community. We don't want to see our county government begin overreaching and abusing its power to appease the minority at the expense of the majority. Last, I try to fix something that isn't broke. Clark County leaders have voted down a solar farm application not too long ago. Our system of checks and balances is working, so I tilt the table in favor of a relatively a small group of people to pass public policy that threatens the livelihoods of our family farmers.
Shelley Blankenbaker. The Republic protects the minority.
Thank you for the extra time, I appreciate it. My name is Shelley Blankenbaker. I reside at 2518 Kettle Bottom Road. And I'm here, basically what I am against solar, but what I want to address today is our UDO. I sent, I think it should be in your packet, a 9-page letter that I pulled from other UDOs in the state of Indiana. We are severely lacking in what we have, and I understand it's a work in progress, you know, it's in the building process. But I want to submit to you guys that we need to strongly look at other county UDOs. There are several things in there that we are not addressing. One that I find very interesting, we do not even, from what I can tell, require an applicant to attach any kind of information to their application. Such as other counties, they, on the site layout plan, which we do require, but this is at the point of application that I'm speaking at. They need to do with that site layout plan. Approximate location of any substations. Do we know where substations are going to be located? I don't think so. There needs to be a topographical map. There needs to be a soil and erosion survey. There needs to be an engineering certificate. I have listed, I can't go through the 9 pages, but there are some really, I think, valid points that we need to address as a county to safeguard the future and moving forward here in establishing anything that might pertain to solar in any capacity. It requires, at the point of application, property value assessment, a written description of the solar panels. Do we know what are you using? What are you going to bring into our county? Who manufactures them? Where do they come from? What are the chemicals involved in these? And do you have an MSDS sheet for those chemicals? Those are the kind of things we're not addressing and that we really need to for the safety and the future of our county. I don't think that's unreasonable. So,
Battery's gone dead.
Alan Applegate, address 426 Meigs Avenue. You all remember me probably from other matters, but speaking as a resident of Jeff and County of Clark, and actually family history, if you look at Baird's, I think we had a farm on Applegate Lane in the late 1800s and early 1900s. It's not a farm anymore. Things progress, things change. I would, in analyzing this ordinance, suggest, and came to the county commissioners meeting after the prior application was defeated, and said that your ordinance was pretty good. There's been commentary tonight about additions and changes, and I think those are probably worth thinking about. I want you to remember, though, that the state is encouraging the development of alternative energy production facilities. It specifically says that in the utilities and transportation section of the statutes. And then also that I believe that the energy companies, electrical energy companies, are required to buy solar and are pushed to buy solar from facilities within their service area. So, and then we have, the statute that creates the solar energy regulations and et cetera. And it says that reasonable restrictions can be imposed, but restrictions, so long as they do not significantly increase the cost of the system or significantly decrease its efficiency or allow for an alternative system of comparable cost and efficiency. So keep that in mind. I mean, we've got the state that's saying it's okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Zane Love.
Good evening, Zane Love, 1923 Rivers Landing Drive, Prospect, Kentucky. I've heard a lot of thoughtful comments tonight, and I wasn't going to speak, but I feel the need to throw this out there. Even though I do live in Prospect, Kentucky, I grew up in Madison, Indiana. All my family lives in Madison, or in southern Indiana, a lot in Madison, some in Milan, some in Osgood, Jacksonville. And I am the oldest of probably 20 cousins. And to say the least, I think solar would be a good idea because it not only opens up job opportunities for my cousins who haven't chosen to go to college, and now they're doing their trade of choice, but it also opens up a good future for kind of building the community around. I care about Southern Indiana a lot. I am only 21 years old, so what do I know? But yeah, I think for the future of Southern Indiana, it would be good because as the grid, the energy grid grows, we're gonna need more energy anyways. So that's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you,
And
Jeff.
take care.
Thank you.
Jackson Daughtry.
Good evening and thank you for your time. Jackson Dowdy, 515 North Flagler, West Palm Beach, Florida. There have been a number of topics brought up tonight, but we just want to make sure we're all on the same page that this vote is not about Bright Night or a specific project area or design or equipment or anything. The county has many stages of process required here, including the BZA, the development plan, which does require a significant fee, which will help the county fund their internal and external engineering review, drainage board approval, building permit approval, and then the annual operating permit. What we're really here about is land use regulations for landowners all across your county. With these vote tonight on land use regulations, we ask you to please consider softening your proposed restrictions on screening requirements and setbacks. These, as mentioned by others, are challenging to meet for a number of reasons, and depending on the landowner and their specific position and their neighbors and so on, could be an overburden on them. Landowners should not be broadly penalized or overregulated just because of a few instances. Again, these will be sorted out by BZA, development plan, and beyond. In many cases, the existing ordinance is very challenging between the fee costs, the annual operating permit. There is, as mentioned before, a decommissioning bond, which actually requires the fund to be overfunded 125% before a shovel goes in the ground, and that is funded and revisited every 5 years. The purpose and operation to ensure the county is made whole and the project can operate safely. It's also my understanding the annual operating permit allows for the county to regularly ensure these projects are maintained safely. Thank you.
Rebecca Bailey.
My name is Rebecca Bailey, and I live at 7621 Oscar Long Road, Marysville, Indiana. And I believe that there should be a better notification system. I wouldn't have known about this meeting unless two ladies had came to my house. It seems like we're not involved as much as we should be, since we're the property owners that reside there. I pay my taxes. I bought my place in 2011, I think it was. And, you know, I just wanna live there. That's what I wanna do. I don't wanna, you know, live through a construction zone with all the traffic that's gonna be brought by all this. You know, construction, you know, for how long? How long are we gonna have construction? How long is it gonna take to finish this project? How are we being notified of everything that's going on that's gonna be in our front yard? I'm totally opposed to everything that's going on with the solar farms. That's all I gotta say.
That was, the last one that had signed up, again, Dale Fields and Gary Pullum didn't show just in case they ran out to the bathroom or something.
Is there anybody out in the hallway? No, they're all good.
Okay, so those were just the two that didn't, but that was everybody off of our list. So, do you kind of want me to put this back up on the screen?
So that concludes the public comment. The rest of the meeting, it will be among the board.
She's helping everybody. Right now.
Let me plug back in here then, sorry. Hopefully I'll reach to. So we can run through any of these. As I kind of mentioned, I know there's some hot topics and some not so hot topics. So I did talk to David before the meeting to see if it was okay. Again, you guys can make two different motions. If there's parts that want to go favorable or unfavorable or no recommendation, we can pull out some of those amendments from David.
She's talking about the ones that she talked about before, the manufactured
Correct.
homes.
Like the manufactured homes that.
In-home childcare.
Yes, so.
But if we're not sold on everything that's in solar.
Right, I don't want you to give one way or the other and feel like it's a package deal, I guess, that if.
I guess my question is if we approve it, we're happy with what we have, but maybe we have concerns about some things that aren't in there.
We can always, yeah,
Go
so
back
we can
and-
go
Don't
through
approve
and
it.
change anything you guys want, but.
No, don't approve it.
Right.
No, don't.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
So I guess maybe I'll start with, are there questions or still thoughts on oh, sorry, I didn't realize I wasn't duplicating, extended. On the non-solar ordinance amendment, so, amendment number 1, which is manufactured homes, amendment number 2, which is uses in, living area in the ag district, 3 is the access to local roads for subdivisions, and 5, which is our minor plat committee. Are there any thoughts or revisions you guys want to make on those? Is that a good place to start?
I mean, I would make a motion to approve those amendments 1, 2, 3, and 5 as presented.
And David, is that good with you to do them separate again?
Yes.
Okay, and I've got 2 copies of the resolution, so we can all mark on there which amendments it is, and that'll be the attachment A. So it'd be a favorable,
I have a second that.
let me grab my, head over here. Okay,
Okay, I have a motion and a second to send a favorable recommendation to the county commissioners to approve the amendments to the UDO for 1, 2, 3, and 5. Any questions or comments on those? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Motion carries. You don't want to pass the first four? Okay.
okay.
David was against.
No, I'm gonna be consistent.
Mr. Abbott, make sure the record reflects Mr. Abbott voted in the negative, but you will also be signing here. So this one, he voted yay, aye, it's in the first column, nay, Mr. Abbott, you're in the second column.
Yeah, my problem is they need to, I don't know, Clark County, some places need to be inspected and cleaned up.
We require inspections.
I don't know if that
yes.
means it, but I'm that much against how dirty Clark County's got some of the rural roads.
So amendments number 1, 2, 3, and 5 will be forwarded to the county commissioners for their actual decision with a favorable recommendation. And I'm making sure. Okay, that was the easier one. So that the one remaining then, would be our amendment number 4, which is all of the ones around solar. I did make a few notes, if you guys want me to run through anything, it's up, I'll time to take direction from you all.
I think one of the things that, Mr. Bryson pointed out was the, page 117, chapter 4, talking noise and vibration about property line versus adjacent dwelling.
And, sorry, I'm still scrolling. Noise and vibration, here we are, sorry about that. I'm gonna zoom in, so you don't have to squint. Yeah, so this one, we currently have at the outer wall of an adjacent dwelling. And somebody had met, you had,
Property line for that.
so. That is a definite, I can draft it.
I agree with that.
I'm gonna make these a different color, just so we can track it.
Property line?
Yeah.
Just the measurement of A-weighted decibels at the property line, not to exceed.
You can't exceed 50.
You
Has
have to
nothing to do
have
with
the property
setback
line.
distance,
Okay.
just noise requirement, restriction.
Hold on, I'm trying to make sure we can everybody can see what's going on here, so this gets struck through then, correct? So this is how you're if you have a motion, this is how you're proposing it to read, is that at the property line.
Right.
Okay, just to make sure I wanna get your verbiage and your words correct and not, that you can see those.
Would be to change that to measure the A-weighted decibels and that they not exceed 50 at the property line of a non-participating property.
Do we have any further discussion on that?
Oh, yeah. You shut it down?
No, she's making the change.
No, I'm just, these are just changes that you guys might suggest, and
Excuse me.
No.
maybe for clarity, I'll just take these into a different color. We'll do that for now, right? I just want you to say, okay, we wanna undo some of these real quick. Okay, I know that was definitely one of those, other suggestions I had just received from you all, or other, again, larger comments, I wrote some of these down or tried to, were the setbacks from right of way, the screening requirements that was mentioned a number of times, that I know are in these current ones, are topics that are not in here, like you did say. Those are included in our current ones, so maybe those are better ones to start with. They're actually included in the current proposed amendment, so, are there any other changes you guys would like to see to this, on any of the other sections? Do you want to go back section by section? Is that
Well,
what you-
Go ahead.
Screening was mentioned quite a few times, and the way this is written, it does seem to me like feasibility of adhering to that could be a challenge. I don't know the answer to that, but that it can't be visible at any time, I think is an unrealistic expectation, personally. I don't think
It's gonna be harder to, it could be harder to achieve them.
Yeah, so I'm worried about that.
What was the original that we have? I'm trying to find.
So
it.
it is, do you want the real?
Oh, I've got it right here.
Current document. So it's basically, it would have read all commercial solar energy facilities shall be fully screened year-round from existing residential dwellings, residentially zoned parcels, or parcels platted for residential development.
I'm not sure the not visible portion of that is realistic. I guess it's, that would be ideal in most circumstances, but topography is gonna make that impossible in certain situations.
Yeah, and if we don't, my own, again, I'm kind of taking direction from you all. If you don't, we might want to further specify at some point what that screening actually entails.
And I think that's
to make sure that we're.
Yeah, I think that's a challenge, that something, some stuff that's not included. We're not gonna resolve everything, I think, that at least I would perceive needs to be in here, tonight.
Right.
So are we going to put this back for more discussion, or review it again? Hopefully.
I think there were some excellent points brought up tonight. I feel for both sides, and we need to be respectful of each other, because I know there's some laughing going on, and if you're trying to come together and work together, that's not helpful. So I feel for you all, especially the people who are surrounded by solar, because personally, I would not live there. Just telling you, I would not do it. I've told everyone involved, including the farmers and Jackson and you all, I don't like solar. I just don't. It's not my preference. But I can't go based on my opinion. There are legal things that we have to follow. I also feel bad for the farmers, because no one has the right to tell a farmer he has to farm if he doesn't want to farm. I mean, you can't do that.
I agree with that, but and to be fair, we're not really farming. Okay, we're building industrial utility scale solar facilities.
Right.
No, I'm talking about farmers.
I totally agree with what you're saying and
Yeah.
the other perspective.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just a tough subject, and there's a way to do it. I agree there's a way to do it, and it's gotta be fair. It can't infringe on either party.
Right.
Because in effect, to approve this project, you're having to get a special exemption to do it on an agricultural lot, because that's the only way you can get approval to put these up anyway.
Right.
So, we should be able to protect everybody involved.
But my other issue is, which really has nothing to do with the UDO, and somehow we're gonna have to, and I don't know if to talk to David, or if we need to talk to the county attorney, because I'm not exactly sure what board it would go through. What I don't like is sorry, Jackson, I don't like all of the people coming in, because it's more than just Bright Night. There's Orion, and I think there's another one coming in and getting leases. And we have no idea, setting up here, where this is going. So we could cover the entire county. We, as a body, do not know that.
Right.
And so we have to stop that from happening. And I liked what the gentleman said. I'm sorry, I cannot remember your name. I wrote it down, but I liked what he said, because I talked about this with some other people about doing a percentage of solar, because that's what they have to do with corn. That's what they have to do with tobacco. And you couldn't farm the whole thing. There were limits put on as to how much you could do. So there has to be a happy medium, and I don't know what that is, because we're all learning this together, and I am not an expert on anything. Just so, in case you all haven't figured that out yet, I am not an expert on anything. So, but I'm trying to learn, and I'm trying to be fair. And, but I also want to protect our county residents, and I also want to protect the farmers. So, because I don't want them to lose their farms because they can't.
Absolutely not.
They can't keep it up, so.
I think, I think there's a way to do it.
Yeah, I agree with you.
To be viable. If you have to put it right on top of an existing residence, I'm not sure that's fair.
I don't like
Are
that.
you saying we need more time to discuss this?
Well,
Well-
I don't have a problem. There's no with current saying- applications.
Well, no,
What
this
there
is
Well, there's
the,
not at the moment. So
but David, if we don't pass it, it's gonna be less strict.
this is more stringent than
Moratorium,
what we have
and you
today.
gotta have time to do it.
We
So-
we can amend it in June. What
I'd like some of these people to work
together.
together. Some of the leaders here could talk with some of the leaders over here. They might work out something.
That's fine, but we can do that later. We can go ahead and do it now, and then do it, and then.
Yeah, but then anybody can slide stuff in.
100% with Connie. This strengthens what is already established for our UDO, which we can still amend.
Right.
Putting it off leaves our UDO is weaker. And at the end of the day,
Well, you said
it's not
nobody-
the deciding factor.
Nobody has an application, is that right? So why the hurry?
They could come, and then they'd be grandfathered in. They could
Right.
be grandfathered in.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
True, Dave?
Yes,
Yes.
happens all the time. Trust me, when I, yeah.
Hey, why don't we, do the old law applies?
So,
Well, that stops it all.
It doesn't stop anything.
Yes.
This is already down in the UDO. It's just not as strict as these requirements. It doesn't change, it doesn't stop anything. It makes us more exposed.
Yeah. it
A
does.
moratorium until you get it figured out.
To be clear, our process is not changing. We still, right now, it's a special exception. It goes before a public hearing. All of the adjoiners get mailed letters, either certified or certificate. And it does go through that process and that public hearing. We're not amending that tonight. I think that's a good, again, it allows the public process to happen, is what we currently have. And our applications and all of those still stand. We require all those detailed drawings. It's just at which application do we require
This is a resource
that?
for the developer to look at and say, hey,
So.
if I wanna move forward and apply for this, I'm gonna at least have to probably adhere to these standards, right?
Yeah, right.
That's all it is.
Right.
Everything else doesn't have to
Weak,
get decided.
they are weak, we do admit they're weak, or think about the setbacks. and-
so with,
If we want to take care of the
They're
fire,
stronger than what's
a lot of
currently on the
questions,
books.
isn't there?
so with all that being said, there were some battery system storage standards.
Exactly.
That we're talking about.
Right.
There's percentage of land usage that we've talked about. There's water well setbacks that we talked about. There's bond requirements that we already have in place. It's a living document. It has more standards tonight than it has currently.
I think property values has to be on that list.
Well, that's more of a BZA thing, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So.
And by that, he means it's one of the standards of evaluation is evaluating the impact of adjacent property owners.
We've
or
also
property
heard
values,
that
is what he's meaning there.
it would be a good idea to form a committee. Because like I said earlier, we didn't have this many people when this UDO was established. So we have more participation, obviously, a lot more. So I would love to see a committee formed. I don't know, and I don't know that this board, I don't think we can impose a moratorium. I think that would be a plan commission, or excuse me, a commissioner's decision. I don't know on that.
I've held the opinion for a long time that moratoriums are not legal.
But it's still not an act of this board, correct, Mr. Ian? The moratorium is still not an act of this board. They don't have that power or authority by state statute.
Right, we can't unpublish the existing UDO, we can only amend.
Right, but you can't put a moratorium on either. That's not a duty or a power that the planning commission holds. County, your legislative body has to do that, right?
So we just did away with a minor plat committee.
Correct.
So maybe we can add a commercial solar committee.
Well, so
Now,
then.
not tonight, not tonight.
There's no statutory law that says that this board can appoint a committee
Okay,
that becomes official.
okay,
There can be an unofficial
okay.
board that can
Then you have
talk
to-
about recommendations, but we can't really make them quite so.
Like a steering committee or something. The minor plat committee has powers and duties to approve minor plats. That's the under state statute, so that's the difference, is they have a power of the planning commission delegated. Like a steering committee or advisory committee or something, that's just, yeah, they don't have a power to vote or approve things. So you need that approved. Okay, so I have, to kind of help move us into some direction, whatever I may want or prefer. We have some amendments on here proposed. We can add, change, delete, you can leave them the same, you can do a favorable, unfavorable, or no recommendation to the county commissioners. We have additional items that we could consider in the future too. We have committees that we can't do that right this moment, but again, you have some options out there. I might divide them into what has been proposed, and if we want to move on any of that, and then you guys can always give me direction on, look at these 3 more topics, or let's figure out a committee, or however you wanna do, again, things that are not included in tonight's items, if that makes sense.
So the changes the modifications that we've made tonight, do we have any further discussion on it?
Yeah,
Right now,
the setbacks, cause
we have not made that change, the only one we have made is your, decibels from the property line, not the hours to work.
Right.
So yes.
So the setbacks will be a minimum of 50, and then somebody said 70, you said
So
75?
our current is 50 foot from the right-of-way line. If we do not have a dedicated right-of-way, which most county roads don't, they're called an assumed right-of-way, and I'll look at our official surveyor to correct me, but it's an assumed right-of-way, so we don't have an actual.
You're saying 50, right? Correct?
It's 50 from the right-of-way, or 75 feet from the edge of pavement if we don't have a right-of-way. Because if we have a right-of-way,
Most of the time, the county does not
it's
have a
50 foot wide. If we have a right-of-way, it's 50 feet wide.
That's what's currently in place.
Right, and most of our
That's not what's
right-of-ways
proposing tonight, Dave.
are wide.
Thank you, thanks.
Correct, so Connie was suggesting though to keep the current.
Right.
Correct, is to not include the 150 from the right-of-way, to keep what is currently on our ordinances. So basically, this number 3, to do not change it from what is currently on the ordinance approved today is what Connie's suggestion was, correct, Connie? Make sure I'm interpreting you correctly. So basically take any amendments that were included, sorry, that's covering it up. Any amendments that are covered in number 3 and don't include any of the amendments in number 3. Keep it as it was, which would be 50 foot from the right of way or 75 foot from the edge of pavement if we don't have a dedicated right of way.
We're gonna put a berm and a fence in between that.
No, it doesn't have to be a berm.
It doesn't have to be a berm, it doesn't have to be fenced, it's just the screen.
It just has to be.
And that's another one that was brought up, we can discuss.
I'm not in agreement with that one, I'm good with 150.
So, okay. Which direction do I go on this one? Let's stick with the setback first, how does that sound? Just to get some movement on some.
Well, I mean, we'll just have to ask everyone what.
Right. And somebody can make a motion that includes or doesn't include it, but.
The problem with that actually comes into play is that becomes a dead space. Who's gonna maintain that? If they-
Correct.
The property owner.
So a lot of it's ag, which.
Lease.
Yeah, so that was one of the, I think the genesis of that is 150 feet, it's big enough that that space won't be leased, and so it's a local farmer that's gonna have to maintain that, so it becomes kind of a area that's not usable, more or less.
I don't know why you couldn't plant crops in.
Then it has not crops in that, yeah.
I went out and measured it, it's not a lot.
It's 50 yards.
It's not.
50 feet.
50 feet.
Or, yeah, well,
Yeah, you don't.
150 from, wherever that point is, yeah.
Again, a BZA can make an exception, if we're on a county road, there's nobody around, and you wanna let them move that setback to 20 feet.
They'd have to apply for a variance in order to do that.
But it wouldn't necessarily preclude them from utilizing that land, since they gotta go to BZA anyway to get it done. But it puts more of a strict requirement on, if somebody's house is right across the road from it, it gives us a little cushion, right?
Yeah, and with those approvals for BZA, they do, I think I mentioned to you earlier, have, you have the ability to add reasonable restrictions and conditions to those approvals. So if there's one property that's like the anomaly, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We wanna, that could be taken care of through a BZA condition or written commitment, too. So I just wanna make sure, again, it's all about balance, but, more I'm just talking from an administrative standpoint. Otherwise I don't.
So what's the final word? What's the word?
You all are gonna have to tell me. This is not up to me. We can either leave it at 150 or we leave it at the 50-75. That's, whoever wants to maybe make the motion, that's included. The other one that was mentioned was the screening and what you guys would want to maybe do on that.
I was thinking about number 2. Or am I jumping the?
Which,
I mean, we're gonna talk about
Do you want me to run through them each guy, one by
Well,
one?
if we're gonna make changes, we need to do just one section at a time.
Okay.
We can't do everything all at once.
Do you want me to just start right here at 115?
Yes.
Okay, so how about on page, what would be page 115 under power and communication lines? What do you guys want to put any changes in the favorable, unfavorable, no recommendation?
I'm good with what's proposed.
I'm good with that.
Ready for change.
Yeah.
Alright, so that was an easy one. Setbacks. Right now, it is proposed as 150 from a non-participating. Let's start with just that one. Is that what you want to include in this proposed amendments?
I would rather have more, and they ask for less, and then we consider that through.
Who are we taking care of, the county residents or the satellite company? What are we trying
I
to
think
make it easy?
I think we need to be careful with the property setback lines, because some of these landowners' property line, it might be a big empty field. You know what I'm saying? And then it's 150 feet away from but it's a field. I mean, it could be another, you know what I'm saying?
I do, but also,
Yeah.
by having a standard, again, the permitting process, you're gonna have to go get the exemption from the BZA. At that time, some negotiation could be made that takes into account the interest of everybody involved on the adjacent properties, including the landowners that are trying to maximize. That's my position.
I know, but I'm not sure that's not putting, I don't sit on the BZA.
I
That's
think
doing an
as
undue
a general
burden.
rule from like zoning best practices is we don't want to set it up that you're requiring variances.
Yeah.
Because there is a set of criteria in there's, you have to prove hardship that was not created by that landowner, by that property, that this is being imposed upon. So a best practice and the minimum living area is a good example, that was something that we saw consistently. If you consistently see a variance request for the same thing and they're consistently getting approved, that means something needs to be updated in your ordinance as a general practice. Best practice is my opinion as a professional planner. So you don't want to set it up that you have to ask for
I
variances.
think we gotta get more in depth on distance from dwellings. If they're across the street.
Well, this particular one though is just talking about.
Properties that don't
Yeah,
have a
property,
dwelling on it.
it's not about
We're not, we're not. So, Connie, what you said, it could be a large lot, but it could also be a lot like the picture that they brought up earlier where the property line's not far.
Well, that's 250. That's 250 from the.
And we can
house.
clarify
Yeah.
some of this, we can say like, you know what I mean, if you wanna clarify on
And I
this.
still think that needs to be more, just.
I don't think
But-
150 feet's too stringent. These projects.
Which
are gonna
one,
be
two?
very- I don't think 150 is asking. too
This one,
much.
okay.
I don't either.
These projects
so-
are gonna be huge.
So we're good with the 150, and then what about the 250 from residential dwellings? And if you want, I can add a clarifying sentence on the back of this that at a minimum, it shall still comply with, the 150 bucks. If you'd like something, just to make it clear
Yeah.
that it's,
300 feet's 100 yards.
you still have to comply with at least number one on that list.
I would support 300 feet from.
I'd support 650 feet.
1,000.
And then if we look at the property or they come in and there's nothing that really affects it, then it. or there's no
It does say
opposition from
unless
that
waived
landowner.
upon mutual agreement of all property owners.
Yeah, that's like if the person who
It does
lives,
say
owns the
unless
house is
waived
a
upon
carrier.
mutual agreement.
That's what I'm saying.
That's a
But I'd rather set that a little higher than lower, which would be in favor of the resident.
Yeah.
I would not.
They can do a waiver.
I'm not gonna be the one to cause that to be a stigma on them, I'll tell you that. I want to take care of everybody, but.
Who are we taking care of, the citizens or?
I think if we extend
taking
this.
Well,
care of anybody,
the city
it's
is,
time
because
to-
it's, they're all
Anthony?
citizens.
Yes.
Both the farmers and the other people, they're all citizens.
I call them citizens.
They're just trying to buy some buffer for people that they maybe didn't necessarily ask for a utility scale solar project to be built on top of it, right? You're trying to protect those folks as well.
The development or you propose to-
650.
We got a motion?
I don't know, is that what we're looking for?
Well, we're gonna do that after we all agree on what to put in there, I guess.
Yeah.
do you want me to do,
Now let's decide on this one.
I mean, I'm just,
I'm out fine with it. With 650.
and we're talking about B, or number 2, excuse me.
Yes. So 250 feet, close edge of non-participating residential dwelling unless waived upon mutual agreement. And the guy proposed to change that to 650 feet to the closest edge of any non-participating residential building. Residential dwelling, not building. Again, it's a living document.
No, we're not done.
Right.
We gonna get one done. I was gonna vote for this one.
Sorry.
Did you settle on the roads and right of way setback?
No, I
Not
haven't gotten there yet.
yet. Okay, so do you want me to put anything in this one somebody suggested? Oh, well, now it's 650, that's probably still,
And
that
again,
doesn't
that's
matter.
from a
150.
dwelling, that's from a dwelling, right?
It is from, right now it reads as the closest edge of any non-participating residential dwelling. So it's the closest edge of that.
So they're not far off the house, but once
Right.
they've extended that perimeter, they can come back to their property line. As long as they maintain that distance from the dwelling, I think that's reasonable.
Okay. What about the
I think
roads?
that's reasonable.
Yeah, but they can waive it. You
I think that's too
fork
much.
over some cash.
No, you're abstaining for this?
Yes.
I need everybody's input.
Repeat what you said.
You think that's too much?
I think it's too much, but that's my opinion. I have a hard time visualizing 600 feet, so that's part of my problem.
200
I know, you
yards,
guys are
right?
used to
No,
that.
I mean, I know how close some of my neighbors are, and
Well, my neighbors are a lot closer. I live in the city,
Yeah,
so
well-
I mean, they're like right there. So,
I'm
I don't
thinking if
think
they
that's
really wanna
unreasonable.
come here, they'll go. If they really wanna come here, we gotta give them something that say, damn, these Clark County people are doing it right now. So,
I'm just trying to visualize, it's 200 yards essentially. If it's 650, it's 215, 16, 17, 217 yards, 216 yards.
Talk about middle ground, people's wanting 250, people's wanting 1,000, we're somewhere.
no, I don't, I go 650.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was made the Christmas list.
I think it's a lot too. I mean, again, trying to take care of everybody involved, right?
It's a living document. You can always change it.
Harry, when you say that, who are you looking about?
Well, regardless of people that own or tax-paying property owners in this county, that's
Right.
what I'm talking about.
Right.
Tax-paying property owners, that's period, in the story.
Well, we've got subdivisions out there that they're being told what to do in their subdivisions, they have to do this, there's laws there too.
Well, you signed up for restrictive covenants when you buy a lot in the subdivision.
Right.
So they're gonna-
I mean, you do, it's just again, in this case.
Well, on the 650, if there's an application filed and they want to reduce it, they can file a variance along with the
Right,
application.
exactly.
yeah, if we were just saying we don't want to create that,
We
then you
don't
have to
wanna-
do that every time.
But they would need to be motivated to really make the case to get closer than that, right?
Yeah, they have to work.
I mean, I think it's I'm okay with 650. Sorry.
BZA doesn't want that much anyway.
Okay. All
What
right.
about me then?
Do what?
What about roads, right of ways? What do you guys want that to be?
Well, you've protected dwellings, so I'm good with 50 feet on that, to be honest with you.
Okay, so we just keep the current on the roads section.
That's my
Sorry.
opinion.
Trying to get on the right screen here. Does that sound
If the majority
good to everyone?
150, I'm fine with that too.
I like 150 myself.
So where are we at on that one?
Good question.
I'm gonna let you all decide.
Connie, you proposed 75 feet earlier.
Well,
right?
it's 75 feet is in there.
It's currently 50 to
Sure,
50 or
50.
75 feet.
Yeah, but
75
75 is,
If
I
we
see
don't
a
have
50,
right-of-way.
and I see a 50, and I see a 75.
Yeah, so currently it's 50 if we have a dedicated right of way, if not, it's 75 from edge of pavement.
Okay.
Which in most cases, it's gonna
okay.
be 75 from edge of
the
pavement.
county owns.
Majority
very
of
little.
county's not gonna have a right of way.
Correct, it's not gonna be dedicated
Yeah.
right of way, so we don't have a right of way line to measure from.
Right,
But then that goes into the screen, so it has to be screened.
right.
Okay.
But no, we
No.
talk about that one next one.
We'll talk about it. It
So,
depends. It
I've got-
depends across the street.
Two people saying to put it back to the 50, just leave it as is, 50 and 75, and I'm just taking direction from y'all.
I think the
Okay.
50 and 75 is good.
I do too.
Alright, so I'm going to highlight this one back to what it, basically we won't be amending this one, but for the purposes of tonight, I'm going to go ahead and straight through and underline, but this one is, we're going back to what it is. I think we leave or edge of pavement, so that just clarified. This one comes back to life then too. Okay, so currently, and then are you guys, I guess, good with number 4, which is can't be in a floodplain, wetland, or waterway?
Yes.
Now I actually had debate. So now we're gonna what you're currently considering, based on what your amendments were, non-participating is going to be 150 feet from that property line. If it has a dwelling on it, what you're currently proposing is 650 foot from the dwelling structure, the outer wall. And then on right of ways, you're keeping it what it currently is. You're really not amending that section other than adding or edge of pavement. Well, actually, no, sorry. This should actually come out because it doesn't read correctly then. We did that one because it was 150 feet either way because it's big enough. So this will actually come back in here too. Okay, so it will be then the 150 or 75 from the right of way. If we don't have right of way, it will be 75 from edge of pavement. And then we'll keep the number 4 as presented. Okay. Screening. Screening was the next one you guys had thoughts and comments on. I will again take direction from you.
This was extremely tough because of the topography that we have, not always flat.
Correct.
And it's always high above the ground.
We
It's
could
impossible to
specify then like a height of that screen, so it has to be opaque and not visible through a screen up to X feet, 6 feet, 7 feet, 8 feet, or something like that. I'm just trying to get you some language that would suffice what you were kind of getting at.
Where did this language come from that we got right here?
That was just one of the comments we received. It just said, it wasn't a comment, it was just a question of where are you measuring that not visible from? And I was like, well, that's actually a good clarifying thing. I would like that to be just defined. I came up with 5'6" because that's a average vantage point, and it definitely covers a car, so I would say.
We're gonna take a 5-minute break.
Okay, super.
We can't?
We can't stop a meeting in the middle of something.
You have to run directions.
You use the restroom, can you use?
Sure.
Yeah.
We all have been.
So you have the 5'6".
Wait a minute, gotta have a form.
Really?
Yep.
One at a time, so you can't go crazy.
One at a time.
Somebody could just keep talking.
So we can delete, do you wanna delete this?
I feel like you have to delete that because you can't, nobody, you might as well just say.
I mean, we can put where conditions would meet this requirement. You know, just like you said, the topography may not, but there may be a situation where it does meet it. So,
There could be a situation where you actually could screen it with a much shorter just because your vantage points, if that makes sense. If you're higher or lower, it's gonna change.
this could be depending on the topography of.
Well, I'm not sure it needs to be every road in the county. If there's residences across the street, it probably needs to be screened. So if you're driving down the road and there's nothing on either side, or the farmer owns both sides of the road, or not the road, but both parcels, then they're screening it from themselves. You know what I'm saying?
If you're really worried about more of the residences, what we could do is stick with the current, but add in something that it includes properties across the right of way. Does that make sense? So right now, we say it has to be, the current one is that it has to be screened year round from, existing residential dwellings, residential zone parcels, and existing parcels platted for residential development. Again, we can say that that includes those across the right of way or a public road, so it clarifies it.
Yeah, and I don't,
And take out the right of way
and I
stuff.
don't think we can just look at how everything is today. We have to look 30 years into the future.
Well, I think this would,
We did
Or
have
try
including
to.
crossing the right of way. We had that. Yeah, I mean, so, if you, what Connie is saying is going back to, we go back to what we have currently. Because we do have including across any street or right of way. So, we already covered that. If you wanna go back to that, that's fine too. Up to you guys. We can leave that one alone and come back and visit that at a future point in our lives too, if that's.
You're fine with that?
Leave it alone.
Yeah,
and
leave it alone.
we can come back.
Okay, so. Okay, so we are currently, you're gonna leave this alone and leave it as it is currently in the ordinance. So there will be no, actually then I can just delete this one off, David, correct? If we're not going to make any amendments to this section. Oh, other than we do need to change facilities, that's okay. Okay.
Sorry.
We saw the words.
okay.
sure.
Oh, yeah, I ain't gonna miss this.
Sorry, you guys are gonna sit with my tediousness for just a minute. Do you care if we leave existing, just to make sure it's what has happened when it's built, it's not like a house that might show up in
Or existing.
30 years. Okay.
Hold this. I gotta go. I gotta stand
This
up.
is a good point, really.
No, where's the cord at? Where's it? No, it's plugged in. Can I move this back?
So we're doing required plan license. So we're still having, it does not require it if it's the same property, same zoning district, so. Okay, that should take care of that. And this gets unmarked and highlighted. Okay, so this basically takes it back to what it is today, with the exception of deleting the word facilities and adding systems, and writing existing before the residentially zoned parcels and residential platted parcels, basically. Cool? I'll keep it. Ground cover. Any comments on ground cover? Okay, fencing. Any comments on fencing?
Wait a minute, can I stop that for a minute?
Yes.
Did you answer my question a while ago about the maintenance of the inside the fence or whatever, and outside the fence, whatever?
Yeah, so maintenance of the property, again, some even answered that we don't have, as a planning and zoning, we don't regulate like grass height or any of those nuisance ordinances. Township trustee is who in the county regulates grass height and all of that stuff. So that's not something that we, as a plan commission, regulate, and the commissioners don't either. It's to the township trustee level.
We're putting all these rules on her, why can't we put restrictions on that? Because in the county, they say the grass can grow, it's it's farmland or it's whatever land. People in the county can let their grass grow.
But that's
tall.
up to they can fight it, but it's gotta go to the
I don't think
township
anybody's
trust.
doing it. Well,
It
then
goes to the
Be,
township.
you got, I mean, it's still up to the township, not up to us, so that's
Mm-hmm.
something
Okay, I just thought
that,
we could do something.
No.
Keep these places looking good, don't you?
I don't,
I can see them growing up. Somebody said put some animals in there.
They're right, you're kinda getting into that before.
We need to make sure they keep their place clean.
yeah.
Most UDOs say that they have to maintain it.
Most.
Those are in municipalities, whoever said that, not the counties.
And again, I think there's a number of topics we can go through at the end of like other things, and we can maybe look at methods and means to do those, if you want. Okay, fencing, what are thoughts on fencing here? Which includes that it is required materials in the wildlife corridors.
Currently anything to add
as presented. Okay, that one. Okay. Emergency response, this is really just adding the NOx, or the key box on socks, and then the training as well. Okay.
Did you got the local fire departments and got all?
I've talked with Gavin, so he is the director of the Clark County Emergency Services. And these came from him. We ran through other suggestions that that were made at the last meeting, which included emergency like locker boxes for equipment. He said that that's not needed because your emergency responders are gonna wanna keep that equipment on their vehicle or truck or whatever it may be. And then the other one was on the equipment, and he said that he's done research and training on some of these things, and that the local first responders have the adequate equipment to address what they need to on this. So he did think the training was a good idea. It's more of an orientation, get all those first responders out there so they know what's going on, and the Knox box he thought was a really good idea.
You know how many fire departments are in that area?
We're talking about the full county that's under our jurisdiction. We do have those mapped in there on Elevate. We have thanks to 911. We do have all of those fire districts tapped. If you wanna, we can pull them up, but I don't know off the top of my head. My gut says like 9.
Volunteer fire department, what we have.
Some are volunteer and some are not, yeah. Most of our rural ones are.
We did discuss potentially in the future putting, battery storage standards in our ordinance, adding that in.
Yeah, and my opinion on that is if we do it, it'd be battery storage for everything, not just for this, like,
Yeah.
for all uses, and that's a different, we can look at a use standard in the future if you want to on that. So we're good on this emergency response. Noise, vibration, we have one that we've already made an amendment in the blue, of adding it's at the property line and not the dwelling. Okay?
Are we everybody good with that?
Yes.
Alright, and then signal interference, this one, again, is kind of defaulting the state statute on that. Okay. And then decommissioning plan. So again, striking property owners, since that's gonna be pretty cumbersome on the administrative side of things, but adding that if they do sell, that they have to at least get this affidavit of signed. And one thing to clarify, that affidavit is not putting the responsibility necessarily on that property owner, it's just saying as a property owner, even if you lease your property and you have a contract with somebody, that's yours to kind of figure out, basically, because if I were a landlord and my tenant does something, you know what I mean? On that, I'm still ultimately responsible as the property owner. And that's all that's saying. The intention is not to have them do decommissioning, because we do require bonds day one, which is above a lot of the state standards.
That's not part of the UDO.
What is it?
Requirement.
What is it? The bonding? No, it is. We currently have it, I have it right here. So our current regulations on bonding, if I can zoom in for you guys, sorry. Okay, so we currently require they have to do an estimated decommissioning cost, which has to be accepted by the county, agreed upon by the county. So if they say it's $10 and the county says it's $50, completely not real numbers, but they have to have, it has to be approved by the county. After that number is, or that cost is approved, I think as somebody mentioned, we require 125% of that value bonded day one before they can get a building permit. So that's in the place, it's 125%, as Dan had mentioned, that's what we do for roads and for all the other public infrastructure. Most of the state's guidance on that phases in your bonding, and that does have to live the life of the project.
So that's what
Correct. If they default in on it. The intention is to not default, so you don't have to call that in.
So that brings me to a question that may not relate to, when we were talking about, maintaining the buffers and everything like that, we talked about violations, if they don't maintain it. This kind of brings me to that point of, like you said, someone else piece of property rented, ultimately, if the grass is mowed, it goes on the property owner. They're the ones who the lien goes against.
Okay.
So is that the way this will work?
I'll look at our
We
attorney,
need
but
to
in the past, it's always
define
been the
that
property owner.
Which section are you talking about?
I'm not talking about a section, I'm talking about just in general, if the screening of something that's not in compliance, okay, it's not maintained. Say a renter not maintaining the yard, and you send a notice of violation to the property owner.
not to a
Not to the,
leasing.
not to the leasing, the renter, to the property owner.
We send, in a violation of zoning, we send a notice to both.
Okay. So and then we lien the property if they don't come in compliance, for whatever
Well, we
fine,
file.
or you go to court.
We can bring litigation against both of them.
Okay.
Are you sure about that? They don't
Amy,
sound
just a
sure
bit
to
of,
me.
Yes.
clarity here. On
I'm
this
dealing with
item
that right
C,
now.
it's number one, the affidavit of responsibility.
Yes.
I realize that the landowner, if these are leased properties, is going to wind up with the land possibly. But shouldn't that be changed to be a bond so that the property is totally under the bond to put it back into usable ground instead of the
What's
falling
gonna
on
be
the
already?
responsibility of the landowner?
So we have, I guess, just to clarify, to make sure we're talking the same thing, I'll put up on the screen for you, David, this is our current ordinance, and we currently require whatever the agreed upon decommissioning cost is. I use $10 as just an example. They then will have to go bond for.
Is that backed by a bond?
Yeah, it's backed by a bond, and it's at 125% of that decommissioning. So if it was $10 of, it's gonna cost $10 to decommission this, we're gonna firm up a bond day one before they pull it shut on the ground at $12.50. So that gets reevaluated every 5 years, because who knows what it'll cost in another 5 years. So in another 5 years, we have to agree upon that decommissioning cost again, and then that bond can change based on that cost.
Well, the very last statement says if the operator fails to comply with any aspect of the decommissioning plan, the property owner shall be ultimately responsible.
And that's what Mr. Nahan was just saying, is that any violation we send to that property owner too.
Those are the ones that wanted it.
But what is the life of the bond?
It's the project.
Who perpetuates the bond?
So every year when they come in and apply, the intention of the annual permit wasn't to review their viability or whatnot. It's just a checkpoint to say, show me that you've paid your commercial liability, show me that you've paid your bond, because you can't go in and pay for a bond for 30 years. That's not how they do it. They're paid annually. So, that you've been through that world. So it's to come in every year. They just basically show us, yes, we still have commercial liability insurance, we're still holding that bond, even though we should get notice as a certificate holder if, they don't pay it. But it's just a way to kind of check in with them to make sure
Is that gonna show up?
it's not to reevaluate whether the use is permitted.
As long as the county is the named holder,
Yes.
if they do not renew
And
that
that's-
bond,
yes.
they will send something to
They,
the county saying.
they will, but it's just an extra checkpoint to make sure if it's sent and maybe it doesn't, we're aware of it.
Is decommission and deconstruction the same, is that?
Decommission in our sense is taking that site back to its pre-solar state, and we do specify that that's 48 inches below grade. So everything has to be removed 48 inches below grade, and that's based on the state guidance out of Purdue and all of those.
It's all about Purdue.
Whenever they install the first solar panel, is that going to be commercial or residential? Does it turn
From a
to
tax
top?
perspective, or is that?
Or
Oh, that's my next question.
Tax perspective, the state, and, I am not gonna be, pretend to know anything Butch Luck knows. By all means, I will always default to him, but, from what he has sent us, again, just as an educational thing, is there is a state assessment that the state comes out with. There are 3 zones in the state of Indiana, obviously we're in the southern one, and they set a maximum tax rate for solar, commercial solar in particular. I do not know what it is this year. I think when he sent it last year, it was a little over $5,000 for our region. It's more than double that up north. So it would go from, is an ag tax, again, I'm not Butch, at $1,800 or something to that, whatever that number is, unless it got abated or something of that nature, which is a whole process outside of
Because
us.
I don't know exactly the farmers what they're paying like, but I was always hearing 1,400 and it's gonna go to 5,500.
Yeah, it's somewhere in the
To make sure they know
5,000s.
that the solar panel will pay that.
And that's kind of that
That's not
whole
our
making
job.
sure that.
No, I'm just
Yeah.
wanting these people to hear. I know some of these answers, but I just wanna make sure they hear.
Yeah, so there is a tax cap, like a rate for solar and commercial solar in particular, which is, provided to us from the state. Predecessor, excuse me. Okay, so we down this one. There it is. Okay, so then we get down to the commercial liability insurance. This is where we still require general commercial liability. The question is the whole environmental one, what you guys want to do for this.
Did this come from a recommendation as well from someone?
It came from, public comment when. It is not in like the Purdue Veterans.
You actually wrote an ordinance that had.
There was, I had another community client and who was an insurance broker, and that was the first time I had seen that. I didn't even honestly know.
Am I making sense? Because I really had that in my statement.
And I think that's where some of that comes from.
But you notice
So I don't know a whole lot about that insurance.
What did I say about cyber insurance?
Don't know what it is necessarily, but.
Remember, how is insurance going to help you? Right? What does insurance do?
Yeah, I think that would be fair. Because all I've heard is that insurance can be expensive, and that's why we did add in the option that if there's not gonna have.
I am concerned about this project owner thing.
We really don't have that.
There are solar panels.
If the project owner demonstrates that all sales solar panels.
3% of solar panels have the toxicity, but the newer solar panels do not. I have no idea what type of solar panels these companies might or might not be using. I imagine the ones with the toxicity in them are probably the cheaper panels, my guess.
They've all got.
They could waive it all together if they can demonstrate it doesn't contain those components.
That was kind of the thought that we.
What she
But we don't know if the same panel's gonna be there for 30 years.
You require a third party?
They could switch it out. Technology changes.
Well, they were using single facial, now they're bifacial.
If we're gonna start manufacturing.
I don't know that. They don't know this stuff.
So where would you like me to go on this one with any things on this?
Say that about third party. Come on. I always say shit.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Okay.
What about a third party though, assessment?
Ma'am, you're not part of the conversation.
Well, I should be.
You're not.
Put me on the committee.
If you keep talking.
I hear ya. It won't be the first time.
So that gets us through the items we had tonight. Again, tonight or another night, you guys can give us thoughts on any of these additional things. Again,
So how do we add additional things?
same process, or if you guys wanna do a committee, we can work on that. Again, that's completely up to you guys. Officially, it has to go through a public hearing, and it has to go to commissioners eventually. but-
Can we send you, should we send, if we wanna see certain things, maybe added to the docket for discussion at the next meeting in June? Can we
Yeah,
send that email?
that would be fine if you wanna send topics, and then we can, and maybe we can figure out how you guys wanna form a committee. In the meantime, Tim, or whatever you wanna do.
Is that okay?
So we're not voting on anything tonight?
Yes, I'm
Hold on, this is the-
gonna make a favorable recommendation to send this to the commissioners for approval.
Okay,
As
As
amended.
as amended on the
Because
screen.
I cannot remember all this.
Do you want me to go through those really quickly?
No.
Okay.
Keep
So
me
figure it
tired.
out because you're gonna send it to us.
You can print it.
Okay. So this
I'm
is
gonna second his
What happened to all
proposal.
the Moses he was over there? He taking a shit break.
resolution number 6.
How come I'm always on
Okay, so-
Thursday?
Commissioners,
So I have a
I'll make a
motion.
favorable recommendation to the Clark County Commissioners
For amendment
for amendments,
4. This is amendment 4 out of our packet.
amendment 4 out of our packet.
And I have a second, right?
And I second.
I have a motion and second to send to the commissioners a favorable recommendation. I'm having a really hard time, I'm sorry.
It's only 9
With
o'clock.
section 4, to the county commissioners. Any other questions or comments?
Yes. We've been all
Shall
hands
not
up.
be
We got a
required
pile
if
here.
the project
I
owner
think we'll make a
demonstrates
decision
that all
quick. We
panels.
haven't even seen some of this stuff. I don't know why people even make it, we're not gonna look at it. But
Do you wanna leave
Well,
things the
actually,
way
they
they
were
are now?
emailed to us, so I read.
We got a motion on the table.
Yeah, we have a
well,
motion.
she asked me if I could speak.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's a work in process,
Yeah.
that's way I can.
It sounds like we're moving that process and.
Well, we're making it stricter,
We're making it a
so,
little more rigid
Yeah.
right now,
Okay, okay.
so I mean, that's my perception.
You want 650 and I'm happy. You may not look like it, but I am.
That was a good thing.
That would look good too.
Okay, so you have a motion on that and a second.
I have a motion second, all in favor, signify by saying aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, no one abstained, just for clarity's sake? Okay. Here's your ayes, you make sure you sign that and have the other two, right?
You just passed it.
And in the meantime, you can see any topics you'd like to further explore, and we can discuss it at the next.
I wanna keep my mind. Jason, I got 2 jobs.
No, they did not.
Anything else you guys got?
Yeah, there's nothing.
They did not adjourn. They did not adjourn. They have not closed it yet.
Okay, no, we're not done.
They're not done, Luann.
We still have more to go, so if y'all wanna leave, you can, but we're not done yet. Sorry, we voted on that and everyone's happy, but there's not much left. Okay, reports, resolutions, and communications planning report.
Did you have the
Residential, structures, the cost was $12,607,062, and the 12 square foot was 74,176.
All right, thank you. Legal counsel, do you have anything? Okay, no. Does anyone else have anything on the board? No? Do I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, now we can go.
Second.
Is there a second, all in favor? I hear that. Aye.